Chapter 11:15. Are you sure that the great martial heavenly lord has been alerted and has come out of seclusion? Someone from the Heavenly Morning Post inquired because the news was too sudden. In fact, the people from the other best-selling newspapers were also puzzled. Logically speaking, Qingzhou was relatively calm. The trilineage struggle had yet to truly affect this place. There was a martial madman behind the great martial lineage, and he was a bit arrogant. I swear, something big has happened. I was outside the great martial lineage's main altar when I heard the heavenly bell. The heavenly venerable must have come out of seclusion and heard the death knell. In a short while, the best-selling newspapers and online platforms received the news and arranged for people to rush to Qingzhou. Not long after, someone received accurate information that the location of the incident should be at Minghu Immortal Cave. Everyone was in a state of unrest. Many people were astonished. Vaguely, the people in charge of these best-selling newspapers and periodicals felt that something big had happened. Today's headlines might be very substantial. How many people from the Heavenly Morning Post are close to Qingzhou? I need to get first-hand information as soon as possible. I heard that the great martial scholar is personally rushing over. They got the big news. Our Tonga newspaper has always been the best-selling newspaper in recent years. Our circulation is #1. Send me a few capable and experienced war correspondents from the Green Province where the three factions are fighting for supremacy. A storm was brewing near Minghu Immortal Cave. Many people already knew that a large group of divine kings had arrived, and even the heavenly venerable had come. This was shocking news. For a moment, this place was in chaos. Chu Feng had escaped and successfully left Qingzhou. Now that he was separated by several prefectures, he was no longer worried. He walked out of the stone jar and began to dig in a secret area in search of Gu Qinhai and the donkey spirit. Deep underground, the donkey spirit was flattering like a lackey. "Brother Gu, I'll help you massage your back and head. My skills are very good," even Ji Dade said. He laughed dryly and did not say it. That was because Chu Feng had said that letting him massage his head was like being kicked in the head by a donkey. "Stupid donkey, do you think you can atone for your sins like this?" Gu Qinhai was trying to intimidate him. This damned donkey had spouted a lot of nonsense in front of the extreme martial clan's ancestral grave. The donkey spirit smiled apologetically and said, "Brother Gu, you can't bear a grudge. I was only joking with you in the past. Now, I'll help you clean the coffin. Look, it's so shiny. As the saying goes, wipe it frequently and don't let dust get in the way." Gu Qinhai wanted to hit it. Originally, there was not a single thing. Where did dust stir up? "Stupid donkey, what are you doing?" "Hey, I'm spitting. I'll clean it for you." "Did your brain get kicked by a donkey?" "Mother of asterisk her, stupid donkey. You're doing this on purpose, aren't you?" Gu Qinhai stomped his feet, slapping the coffin board, feeling disgusted. "I definitely wouldn't kick my own head. Idiot, I'm going to eat you and turn you into donkey meat." Chu Feng was speechless. After rushing here, he didn't say anything about the Eru. He quickly put away the reincarnation soil he had left behind. "Ah, big brother, master, father, you're finally here. You scared me. To think that I, the majestic, immortal bird, almost became a donkey jerky. Old Gu, that stupid bastard, he actually wanted to drink my blood. Fortunately, you came back in time." The donkey spirit straightened his back, no longer afraid, and complained to Chu Feng. Gu Qinhai, #yin. In the end, the donkey and the malicious spirit asked Chu Feng what was going on outside. After I killed the extreme martial clan's core disciple, I went crazy and even dug up the immortal cave. I reckon that something big will happen. I just saw on the internet that many war reporters are rushing over. Wait for the newspapers later." The malicious spirit was speechless after hearing this. The commotion would definitely be huge. Qingzhou, Lake Ming. The extreme martial clan had arrived. His true body descended, and that place was hazy. He was covered in primal chaos, and all the divine kings prostrated themselves in worship. They felt a terrifying pressure when facing him. "Master, the heaven marrow liquid has dried up. It was all stolen by someone. This is a provocation and also a great hatred." A divine king spoke with an angry expression. He was the extreme martial clan's direct disciple. Bright Jade and Zhuang are dead, and even Long Yu has been beaten into a state of madness. This is really despicable. He's crazy enough to cause trouble for our bloodline. In reality, the extreme martial clan naturally knew about this. The core disciple had been killed in the Immortal Cave. This was a major event. When he received the report, even he was shocked. And now, the Immortal Cave had been destroyed. That person's provocation was too excessive. The extreme martial clan used the strongest great divine sense to scan the land, looking for clues. In the end, he was sure that the person had come up from underground. Return to the origin. Taiwu released a low shout towards the entire underground palace. He was using a type of great divine ability, wanting to go back in time. He wanted to see exactly who dared to be so brazen. However, he failed in the end. He didn't succeed in returning to the past. This is a divine king sucked in a breath of cold air. There was only one possibility for this to happen. An extreme Empyrean had come here and used some methods to hide the heaven's secrets. Otherwise, it would be a great figure-taking action. Not even the extreme martial clan could do anything about it. This was extremely terrifying. Even someone as powerful as the extreme martial clan couldn't see any more clues. Bring Long Yu over, the extreme martial clan ordered. Long Yu had lost his mind and gone mad. It was truly a bit miserable. His eyes were bleeding, and he was crazy. He could almost be considered crippled, for better or for worse. He was once an expert in the top 100 of the divine list. At this time, the extreme martial clan didn't need to take action himself. A divine king was already searching his sea of consciousness to see who injured him. However, the result was unexpected. In Long Yu's crazy memories, he saw arrows flying over one after another. Golden light filled the sky, all of them shooting towards him. The world's #1 divine archer? That divine king was astonished. He didn't believe it. No matter how crazy Grady Palace was, they wouldn't do this kind of thing. The extreme martial clan frowned. He personally investigated, but in the end, he didn't find anything special in Long Yu's memories. He didn't see any traces of the enemy. The atmosphere was serious and extremely tense. Many people came outside the Immortal Cave. Many of them were war reporters. The three lineages were contending for hegemony. They followed up on the front lines and reported on the front lines. These people thought of all kinds of ways to understand the inside story. In the end, they had great magical powers and obtained some news. The first was about Long Yu. This was because he had once escaped like a madman and even ran to Ming Lake in one breath. The Heavenly Morning Post brings you the latest news. Something big has happened to the core disciples of the extreme martial clan, especially Long Yu. His eyes are bleeding, and there are no less than 40 bloody holes all over his body. Moreover, he has gone mad. Long Yu had gone mad and gone mad. This news spread to the outside world. The latest news from the ancient platform says that Long Yu has been driven mad by someone. Someone attacked him, causing him to be bewitched. He can't recover his consciousness for a while. It had to be said that these best-selling newspapers and platforms were all very resourceful. They were well-informed and grasped many resources. The divine kings of the extreme martial lineage had already sealed off the news, but some people had used some unknown methods to pry open some openings and find out immediately. Extra! The Black Blood newspaper has already published the latest news. 2 of the extreme martial lineage's core disciples have died. 1 has gone mad, and 2 important guests have been killed. This news broke out one after another and stirred up many regions. How could it be? Even the core disciples have been killed? Who would fight to the death with the extreme martial lineage? This was a very cruel and terrifying question. People were digging further, wanting to unravel the mystery. They all wanted to know who had done it. Not long after, the Heavenly Morning Post revealed that the extreme martial clan had rushed into the clouds and disappeared. It seemed that he was heading towards another place, the Serene Mountain. Many people knew that his ancestral grave was there. At the same time, his Tao companion was also buried there. Why did the extreme martial Heavenly Lord leave the Minghu immortal cave, in such a hurry? He actually ran to the Serene mountain. Could something big have happened there? Some people were puzzled. In truth, the extreme martial clan was restless. He felt that something was summoning him. In the end, he had to confirm some things. Chapter 11:16. These words sounded so awkward. Gu Chenhai was so angry that he slapped the coffin. He really wanted to go out and teach that brat a lesson. Old Gu, you're angry, but you're not saying anything. That means you're tacitly agreeing. What a bold ghost to even dare to seduce Tai Wu's wife. As expected, nothing good would come out of a donkey's mouth. In the heavenly gold coffin, Gu Chenhai calmed down and said disdainfully, "You don't know Gu Chenhai in your life. It's useless to call yourself strong. You're all too vulgar." Old Gu, you didn't leave any clues, did you? Chu Feng asked. Gu Chenhai originally didn't want to pay attention to him, but in the end, he still answered. "Don't worry, I've died once and haven't been completely resurrected. I'm immortal and have already transcended the great world. In addition, you left behind reincarnation soil on the coffin. It's impossible to leave any clues." At the Serene Mountain, a shocking aura erupted. Celestial, venerable energy wreaked havoc, causing the entire region to resonate. In particular, there was a prehistoric battlefield in this area. For a moment, chilly winds howled, ghosts wept, and gods wept. Blood rain poured down from the sky. The yellow whirlwind kept spinning, and the entire world lost its color. That day, Tai Wu was furious. The Serene Mountain was sealed, and no one outside knew what had happened. After a day and night, Tai Wu rushed back to the Minghu immortal cave and used his all-seeing divine ability. He didn't hesitate to spend a lot of effort to deduce who had come to commit the crime. Evidently, he wanted to find the culprit. He was so angry at the ancestral grave that he couldn't find any clues, so he killed his way back. However, after a whole day, Tai Wu still didn't find anything. He almost turned the underground palace upside down, but in the end, he only found a speck of dust that stood out from the masses. This was the extreme martial art. He could discover that this seemingly ordinary speck of dust was somewhat abnormal. How can an ordinary person notice it? A speck of dust was too insignificant and could be ignored. Moreover, this speck of dust was ordinary and no different from ordinary soil. However, Tai Wu had an intuition that it was somewhat different. This was due to Chu Feng's negligence. At that time, he had scattered too much reincarnation soil. Even though he was very careful, he still left behind a speck of dust. However, this was not a big deal. Tai Wu studied it for a long time, but in the end, he did not figure out what was so special about it. He just felt that it was strange. "Guard this place for me. I must get to the bottom of this matter," Tai Wu said solemnly. He was truly angered. Core disciples dying was one thing, but even their ancestral graves were dug up by others. This was intolerable. His heart was filled with boundless killing intent that had long since boiled over. Tai Wu left to seek advice from his master. At the same time, he borrowed the netherworld mirror to see what had happened in the past. That was a heavenly treasure given to him by his master's master, the martial madman. It was said to be able to see through the past. Tai Wu left. He swore to uncover the culprit and wouldn't rest until he was dead. Even though he was an Empyrean, he had lost his aloof coldness and calmness today. Even an Empyrean would not be able to endure having their ancestral graves dug up. Furthermore, the grave of his Taoist companion, the grave that he had painstakingly constructed with all his might, actually had a thief's hole in it. Damn it, he actually came here to rob a tomb? This was simply infuriating. Verdant bamboo boats, multicolored heavenly ships, and 7 treasures glazed ships were crowded on the bright lake. There were also many divine ships floating in the air above the spirit lake. They were flickering with runes and overflowing with brilliant colors. It was unknown how many evolvers had come today. Many of them had come from the front lines along the way. They were all war reporters and were known as fighters among information collectors. How could something not happen to the Tai Wu lineage? That was because this lineage was too powerful. Not long ago, Tai Wu's master had appeared in Yin Prefecture. A great explosion had occurred in Yin Prefecture, causing Yin Qi to overflow into the heavens. A heavenly pit had appeared and was suspected to have run through the entire Yang realm. That place had already become the 21st Forbidden Zone. It was reported that someone had seen Tai Wu's master with snow-white hair and a jade-like complexion. She had once stood outside Yin Prefecture to prove that she was not only alive, but also at her peak. Someone actually dared to do such a tyrannical lineage? Therefore, the powers behind the best-selling newspapers and magazines had all sent people over. Many of those powerful Evolver clans had also come to collect information. News from the ancient news agency. The Bright Lake Immortal Cave has been reduced to a wasteland. We can clearly sense the collapse of the worldly essence here and the loss of the essence of the mountains and rivers. Once this news came out, everyone was in an uproar. The invading enemy was too ruthless to destroy an immortal cave. This kind of place was even more valuable than a few core disciples. This was tantamount to breaking the foundation of the Tai Wu lineage. Hello, everyone. I'm the war reporter Hun Peng. I swear on my identity as a Peng that everything I say is true. I've long since cultivated the heavenly eye. Not long ago, I saw the primal chaos mist outside the lake and saw Tai Wu's true body leave. His face was ashen and his fingers were trembling. He was unable to restrain his anger. This Peng race reporter was very excited as he explained the situation. According to his conjecture, there was something even more astonishing here. Otherwise, even if several core disciples had died and the heavenly essence had been lost, the Tai Wu lineage wouldn't have been so angry. The Tai Wu lineage had its own temperament and calm state of mind. It was said that even if the sky collapsed and the earth collapsed, his expression wouldn't change. Soon after, the major newspapers and periodicals sent out gold medal intelligence collectors and ace battle reporters to dig deeper and expose more information. Powerful divine kings came, and even half-step Tai Wu lineages were alarmed. They took out the heaven observation mirror and used the heaven observation technique to monitor Ming Lake Immortal Cave. Tai Wu found the place where his master was in seclusion. He landed in a place with verdant hills and limpid waters and arrived in front of an ancient cave. Outside the cave, the mother plant of the heavenly flame banana fan was growing. It spewed out raging flames and filled the air with primal chaos. A golden crow cried out and was in charge of guarding the cave entrance. "Master, I've come to borrow the nether passage realm." Tai Wu knelt outside the cave and respectfully bowed to the woman in the depths of the primal chaos mist, waiting for her to wake up. Not long after, he heard a pleasant sigh. "Get up and talk." For a time, Tai Wu endured the flames of anger in his heart and narrated what had happened. He even presented a speck of dust for the beautiful, white-haired woman to see. She couldn't see through what kind of soil this was. It was extremely strange. She frowned, but couldn't come up with an answer no matter how hard she thought. One had to know that she understood almost all kinds of soil in the world. Even if she hadn't obtained or seen them before, she had heard of them. She had seen the heaven soil that could nurture celestial venerables and the longevity soil that could nurture the chi and blood of almighty beings. She had even seen the legendary universe soil that could nurture the grand universe grade fruit, space soil. Although she hadn't seen it with her own eyes, she had heard of its description. In addition, there were several kinds of strange soils that could nurture different kinds of invincible fruits recorded in history books. She had also been fortunate enough to see a few words describing them. However, they were different from the speck of dust and didn't belong to the same genus. After a long time, she recalled an old matter. She had vaguely heard that her master's archenemy had been looking for a type of soil. It can't be so coincidental. Could it be this kind of soil? Otherwise, the other kinds of soil would match up. I should have sensed it. Even this female almighty being was frowning and bewildered. This surprised Tai Wu. There was something his master didn't know. One had to know that his master was the martial madman's most beloved disciple and had received all his teachings. "Master, can you guess who did it? This style is too hateful." It must be a powerhouse with an extremely profound realm. Otherwise, how could he enter the underground palace? However, he actually dug up my ancestral grave and killed my junior disciple. He didn't care about his identity and face and attacked our lineage. It's too hateful. Tai Wu was unconvinced and wanted to ask his master to come out of seclusion and bring along the spirit-penetrating mirror to investigate thoroughly. Attacked? The white-haired woman with a feminine face was shocked. She took a deep breath and said, "Could it be someone from that lineage?" For so many years, as a member of the martial madman's lineage, she didn't fear anyone in the world. She wasn't afraid of any lineage. Even if she encountered a few ultimate orthodoxies, almighty beings, she wouldn't be afraid. However, there was only one lineage that made her incomparably fearful. Back then, even her incomparably overbearing master had been attacked. After exchanging 800 moves, her master was badly beaten and had to flee frantically. Which lineage? Tai Wu was shocked. Even his master was bewildered and revealed a solemn expression. This matter seemed to be somewhat terrifying. The white-haired woman didn't reply. She was thinking carefully. This speck of dust was very similar to the soil that person had searched for back then. Moreover, this time, the style of action was still the same as before. It was very similar to that lineage. How could she not be shocked? In the Minghu region, reporters from all over dug out all kinds of news. Some people deduced that Mingyu, Zhuahong, and the others were all killed by an evolved freak of the same level. Some people were happy, some were angry, some clapped their hands in delight, and some cursed. The rogue cultivators and a few extremely powerful orthodoxies who had enmity with the Tai Wu lineage expressed their opinions one after another. Especially at this juncture, several little freaks had spoken up. It was very interesting. They all expressed that they would take responsibility for this matter. Moreover, during this process, there was actually someone named Chu Feng who passionately commented that he would take full responsibility for this matter. Everywhere, people were dumbfounded and shocked. Of course, the several heavenly venerables involved were so angry that their beards almost broke. They wanted to kick their own little freaks to death. What were they trying to do? Or were they trying to find a sense of existence? They really wanted to pinch them to death one by one. Damn, little brat. Have you seen the general situation clearly? Even if they are sworn enemies, they can't take part at this time. Chapter 11:17. From the beginning to the end, Chu Feng had never expressed any responsibility. His true body was online and was dumbstruck after seeing the news. He really wanted to say, "This young master is here. Motherf asterisk cur, I never said I would take responsibility for this matter. Which bastard is impersonating me?" This matter was a bit unjust. How could he express his position? How could he take on this kind of dirty work? Oh, which immoral person is framing me and framing me? He was indignant. The donkey spirit curled his lips and said, "Drop it. This matter was done by you. What injustice is there? This is the truth." Gu Chunhai nodded in agreement and seconded the motion. Chu Feng was speechless. Although he was the one who dug up the grave and killed the core disciple of the extreme martial ancestor, his true body had never stood out to express his position. Currently, he was evolving in secret and waiting to rise. Who would self-destruct and come to the world of the living? In the end, Chu Feng was extremely angry and said, "Regardless of whether I did it or not, there's a bastard who made me feel especially wronged. I want to have a good chat with him. Don't let me know who he is. Otherwise, the most talented geologist in the world will make him understand why flowers are so red and why there are so many robber holes in his ancestral grave." After the anger subsided, he seriously pondered for a while and felt that this matter was definitely caused by the enemy of the extreme martial ancestor using Chu Feng's name to obstruct this lineage. In recent years, many people in the world of the living knew the name Chu Feng. This was because the Chu clan was too ferocious and produced a large number of talents. Things like "my uncle is Chu Feng" and "my brother is Chu Feng" were simply one wave after another. It was said that this was the handiwork of someone in the world of the dead. Not only Chu Feng, but the others were also speechless. They felt that someone was deliberately obstructing the extreme martial ancestor. Of course, The other little evildoers were also not small and were too restless. They felt that since they were enemies, they were stirring up trouble. This meant that you and Zhuahong were too weak. What extreme martial sect's true inheritance? Mastering the profound meaning of the millstone fist. Too useless. I can poke him to death with one finger. Sigh. The extreme martial bloodline has been crippled. What a disappointment. This young one toured the bright lake at night, beheaded the so-called Heaven's Pride, and then calmly left. This bloodline can't even withstand a single blow. As soon as these words were uttered, they were cut down. It didn't matter if the people outside believed it or not. In any case, the commotion had spread out, and the ancestors of their respective clans had been alarmed. The first thing they did was to grab their collars and give them a good beating. Damn child, what's there to wade in this muddy water? If one wanted to enter the immortal cave, they would need to be led by an existence that surpassed the God-King realm. Are you trying to tell the outside world that this old man personally took action? Moreover, you damn child, what you know? The extreme martial clan's ancestral grave has been dug up by someone. His eyes are now red with anxiety, and he can't find the murderer. Why did you come to the muzzle for no reason? It hurts so much. Old ancestor, please calm down. I'll immediately announce to the outside world that this matter has nothing to do with us. In short, these little monsters were beaten miserably by their own ancestors. They cried for their parents, and finally stood up with tears in their eyes to clarify that it really wasn't them who did it. In the outside world, there was a storm. It was noisy and all kind of chaos. Some strong people already knew the truth of the secluded mountain. The extreme martial clan's ancestral grave had been dug up by someone. This really made people dumbfounded, especially when they learned that the extreme martial clan wholeheartedly wanted to resurrect his Tao companion and raise the 9 Heavenine corpse. There was actually a careless robber's hole in his grave. This made the evolvers completely dumbfounded. It was simply an eyesore. At this point, some people finally understood why the extreme martial clan was so angry and wanted to overturn the mountains and rivers to find the culprit. This wasn't a matter of a few core disciples dying. This was related to the fate of his clan, and it was related to his face. This was simply a big slap to the face. It was too ruthless. Even the ancestral grave of an Empyrean had been robbed until it was full of potholes. This was truly arrogant and domineering. This old master is really ruthless. He's not just ruthless. This old master is too domineering. It can even be said that he's crazy and tyrannical. Some people were a bit sympathetic for the extreme martial clan. What kind of opponent had he provoked to put him in such a difficult position? This slap to his face was simply enough to satisfy him. At this time, the extreme martial clan was in the banana cave. He was asking his master for advice, and they were studying that grain of dust together. At first, he thought that this was the soil that could cultivate a semi-ultimate fruit, but after his master's explanation, he rejected this idea. Universe soil could cultivate the mother plant of pollen needed to evolve to the great universe level. This kind of soil was too rare. Even if there was a certain amount of it, it could cultivate an ultimate mother plant and produce that kind of world-shaking pollen. However, it wasn't certain that it could cultivate a great universe-level life form. This path had always been 9 deaths and 1 life. And that so-called 1 life also required one to transform into a terrifying monster that was often indescribable. Moreover, great universe-level life forms were never the same. If it's not the soul flesh that Black Handley is looking for, then it's the soil needed for one of the few unparalleled fruits that haven't been seen for a long time. This was what the white-haired lady said. She had determined the final range. This wasn't soul flesh, but a certain type of soil corresponding to a long-lost, unparalleled fruit from the immortal burial era. In the end, the extreme martial clan successfully invited his master out of seclusion and secretly arrived at the bright lake. First, he took action himself. He used the ethereal mirror bestowed by the white-haired lady to illuminate the ruined immortal cave underground palace in order to look back at the past. However, he actually shone a hazy white mist and couldn't see a single person. This caused him to draw in a breath of cold air. He had no choice but to ask the white-haired lady to take action herself. The beautiful lady frowned deeply. She had also taken action, but there was still no result. The ethereal mirror was said to be able to see everything in the past. It was a treasure belonging to the martial madman, yet it was actually ineffective. This is the result of heaven's secrets being interfered with. Someone did it on purpose. They went to the secluded mountain, but the result was the same. They then returned to the bright lake. Could it be that the soul flesh has covered everything, resulting in this result? The white-haired lady muttered to herself. She increasingly suspected that the Black Hand Lee, also known as Audacious Lee, was this person's direct descendant. He has used countless underhanded methods in his life. Reportedly, it was because he was frantically searching for a certain type of soil. Could it be that he found this soil to make it easier for him to use underhanded methods? It can conceal one's aura and deceive the heavens. Such a mouthful of words made the white-haired lady frown. It would be too terrifying if that bloodline was involved. Let's try using a drop of true blood bestowed by my master. She was very decisive and didn't hesitate to use the true blood bestowed by the martial madman in the past. It was condensed from the martial madman's blood essence and was sealed in a bottle refined from a special heavenly material. There were only a few drops, but they were reflected through the transparent vessel. It was as if they were going to illuminate the void and collapse the eternity. The white-haired lady only poured out a single drop. It landed on the ethereal mirror and soaked it, causing it to erupt with radiance as if it had illuminated the entire ancient world. In that split second, forget about other creatures, even Tai Wu was trembling. He felt a type of reverence from his soul when facing that drop of blood. He wanted to bow down and worship it. That incomparably tyrannical drop of true blood transmitted a type of supreme aura through time and space. It was as if he was the sole ruler. It was as if a figure appeared and stood proudly at the limits of the ancient times, suppressing the years and cutting off the ancient times. Tai Wu knew that this was definitely the advisor he had never seen before, the unmatched martial madman with tyrant blood. At this moment, even the white-haired lady was trembling. Fortunately, that drop of blood's fatal attribute had been refined out and not passed down. Otherwise, there would be a great disaster. When it entered the ethereal mirror, that drop of blood immediately disappeared and turned into a halo of light. 10,000 rays of light shot out, and auspicious multicolored light surged. And I saw it. It's a youth. The white-haired lady's complexion was like jade. Even though she had lived for an endless amount of time, her red lips were still bright and moist. The traces of time on her face couldn't be seen at all. Right now, she was quite shocked. Unfortunately, that youth's figure was too indistinct. It was dark and hazy, and she couldn't see him clearly. However, she could see that it was him who took action in the underground palace, killing Mingyu, Zhuang, and the two core disciples of Tai Wu's bloodline. It was truly a pity. She clearly found some clues and saw a portion of the truth, but it was too faint and she couldn't completely recognize it. Moreover, there was a terrifying shadow at that youth's side that couldn't be seen through it all. It seemed like someone was following that youth. In reality, that was a stone jar that couldn't be revealed. It was like a great abyss, but also like a mountain. It suppressed there, making one feel as if there was an ultimate expert overseeing it. It looked like a humanoid creature. That drop of blood was directly exhausted. The ethereal mirror became dim, and nothing else could be seen. However, at the last moment, the white-haired lady still caught a strand of the truth. The ground that appeared in the mirror was also very indistinct, as if it was covered with some special soil that affected the ethereal mirror. It's soul flesh. It's that special soil that's concealing everything. The white-haired lady gasped. She simply couldn't believe it. Could it be that the ground was covered with that kind of soil? She took out the speck of dust that Tai Wu had presented and placed it on the ethereal mirror. As expected, she failed, but she verified that it was indistinct in the mirror. It's confirmed that there was a layer of soil on the ground that concealed heaven's mysteries. The white-haired lady's blood surged like a great river. She felt that even her many years of quiet cultivation couldn't suppress the throbbing of her heart. A certain thought grew frantically within her. Li Su, he didn't die. She was shocked and even horrified. She guessed that the shadow of the ultimate evolved being in the indistinct mist might be Li Su. He had found soul flesh and that special soil. Moreover, he seemed to have found a favorite successor and was once again causing trouble for her faction. It was just like how he had plotted against the martial madman in the past. Now he had brought back the youth he had taken a liking to. Their styles were very similar, and they were of the same origin. Master, what's wrong? What did you see? Taiwu asked. I feel. The white-haired lady's voice trembled as she said, the prehistoric dark hand Li Su has returned. Even if it wasn't Li Su, it was someone related to him, or perhaps his reincarnation had reappeared. This was the white-haired lady's judgment, and it was a terrifying intuition. Taiwu felt his blood run cold. Although he wasn't born in that era, he had heard of it. Moreover, he had always been searching for that person's past and investigating the various mysteries surrounding his final death. Master, do you still need advisor's true blood to see it again? Taiwu asked. There's no need. It'll be the same even if I see it again. It'll only be a waste of true blood. There's only this little of my master's blood left, and I can't squander it. Is there any news on whether advisor is still alive? Should we go and take a look? Taiwu asked in a low voice. He was somewhat anxious. My master is in seclusion, and I don't know if he's still alive. I hope he can endure it. The white-haired lady was full of worry. This was definitely a big secret, and the outside world didn't know the details. She solemnly said, this time, it involves the dark hand Li Su. I have to go to the forbidden area where my master is in seclusion to take a look. The white-haired lady left because she felt that she had been involved in a huge karma. She had a strong sense of unease. Chapter 11:18. Chu Feng wiped the sweat off his forehead. He realized that he had almost revealed his true identity. Not long ago, he felt quite wronged. There were actually people using Chu Feng's name to claim responsibility for the incident at the Minghu Immortal Cave. This made him extremely indignant. He said that someone was framing him and splashing dirty water on him. Fortunately, the donkey spirit was on all fours and Gu Chunhai was in the coffin. Neither of them had connected to the internet and thought that someone had claimed responsibility in Ji Dade's name. Chu Feng was fairly guilty. He had almost revealed his identity in a moment of excitement. How dangerous! He secretly warned himself that he would have to be careful in the future. You've decisively used underhanded methods. Your control of the fire isn't bad. You have quite a bit of my elder brother's skills back then. Gu Chenhai praised. Regardless of whether it was sincere or not, Chu Feng enjoyed it very much. The donkey spirit was suspicious and mumbled, why does it feel so familiar? There seems to be someone like that in my memory. It seemed to be at a loss. What do we do next? Gu Chenhai asked. Cultivate the heart, cultivate the body, and become a venerable in the Yang realm. Chu Feng had a smug look on his face. He felt a sense of joy and reward. His trip to the Minghu Immortal Cave had been a success. He had killed a core disciple of the extreme martial lineage and had even cultivated a golden body. He had already reached this level without using the pollen. Most importantly, he was only 10 years old. Looking into the future, this was a terrifying innate advantage. In this life, he had advanced quickly on the path of evolution. He was determined and radical. This was the basic quality for stepping onto the path of the strongest. How could it be easy to rise up in an environment dominated by the ultimate orthodoxies and aristocratic families that had existed for hundreds of millions of years? The only way was to break free and transcend. I have a golden body now. I need to consider becoming a sage. In the words of the Buddhist race, I'll be a true Buddha walking among the mortals. Chu Feng's body glowed. His golden body was strong and sturdy like an immortal body. His blood energy surged as he circulated his breathing technique. He seemed even more extraordinary. The heaven marrow liquid had sent him into the golden body domain. He estimated that its effects would begin to decrease, so he prepared to move again. At Minghu, people from the best-selling newspapers and magazines, as well as various evolutionary sects, were still gathered there. They all wanted to find out the latest news. This time, the extreme martial lineage had lost a lot of face, so they naturally wanted to find out the truth. Dare to dig the great martial ancestral grave. This kind of wealth was too shocking. After Tai Wu sent off his master, he was in a terrible mood. This time, it might involve Li Su's bloodline, causing his expression to turn gloomy. He prayed from the bottom of his heart that his grandmaster was fine and still alive. Otherwise, once the situation in the Yang realm worsened in the future, how would their bloodline be able to stand without that kind of support? That day, Tai Wu attacked, directly barging into the residence of an enemy, slaughtering his way to the mountain gate, forcefully and domineeringly demanding an explanation. That was because the little monster of his bloodline had once said that he would take responsibility for this matter, even though he had shamelessly retracted his words and no longer admitted to it. However, Tai Wu still came. He was truly stifled and incomparably resentful. Since he was unable to hunt down the true culprit for a while, then he would go and find some other people to vent his anger. Little bastard, who asked you to speak nonsense? Who asked you to take responsibility for such a shameful matter? I'll beat you to death. There was no doubt that Tai Wu's enemy was very decisive and had once again beaten up his descendant. Under such circumstances, he didn't want to fight with Tai Wu, who had come to visit. Old ancestor, I was wrong. In the future, I won't dare to take responsibility carelessly. The ancestral graves and core disciples of Tai Wu's family have nothing to do with me. Boo-hoo. Tai Wu was furious. He visited 2 mountain gates in succession and didn't hesitate to attack powerfully, shattering the outer regions of the enemy's training grounds. However, he didn't gain any advantage, especially when he heard that little bastard's words. The words digging the ancestral graves were too ear-piercing. He was secretly angry and couldn't even find someone to vent his anger on. It was truly hateful. In the end, he clenched his teeth and posted a reward. The outline of a youth's body was roughly the same as the one reflected in the nether passage mirror. Unfortunately, there was no face and he couldn't see his true appearance. Tai Wu threw caution to the wind. So what if it was Li Su's bloodline? In any case, the 2 sides were destined to clash. Rather than that, he might as well find some valuable information. In particular, he didn't quite believe that it was Li Su who had returned. For a moment, there was an uproar everywhere in the world of the living. Many people were shocked. That was because, according to the information provided by Tai Wu's reward, the death of the core disciple of his bloodline was really related to a youth. Previously, people had only guessed and made all kinds of deductions, but now it had actually been confirmed. Without a doubt, Tai Wu had found something and was now publicizing it in hopes that the people of the outside world could help and further lock down the true culprit, who could actually destroy the core disciple of Tai Wu's bloodline. Moreover, he took the initiative to run into their immortal cave to kill them. His courage is astonishing. There's no need to think too much. It's definitely an incomparably terrifying bloodline. Otherwise, how could he dare to do this? The most important thing is that the youth killed the core genius of Tai Wu's bloodline cleanly. I reckon that he's extremely powerful among his peers. On that day, although Chu Feng didn't come into being, the whole world was discussing how extraordinary the killer was. They believed that a peerless young expert had appeared. Everywhere was in heated discussion. There shouldn't be many youths with such methods. Since it really involved a youth, the scope has been greatly reduced. I feel that the descendants of the Buddhist race, Hung race, and Li race all have this ability. But is there a need for them to act like this? It can't be Lan Lin, right? This is a youth of mysterious origin. He has a powerful Tao protector and unparalleled talent. It's said that he has to reach the sage realm before coming into contact with the pollen. Could it be that girl from the Hung race? She's only 12 or 13 years old, but she has already secretly made her debut. She's reputed to have the strongest bloodline in the last 100,000 years. The people discussed spiritedly. The war reporters and people from the major evolutionary sects who had come to inquire about the news had all retreated from Ming Lake. Before leaving, Tai Wu had made an exception and allowed them to enter the underground palace to observe. Ming Yu, Zhuo Hong, and the others' humanoid ashes were still there, causing a sensation. The killer was indeed cruel and straightforward. On that day, several of the best-selling newspapers in the Yang realm all carried out reports. There were all kinds of guesses and heated discussions. Everyone says that it can't be a famous person in the Yang realm, but we believe that the killer is a descendant of the most powerful bloodline in the Yang realm. This time, it's just a trial. We have reason to suspect their identity. At present, we have locked onto a total of 8 targets. Some newspapers really dared to say anything and were rather confident. For example, the Tongwood Daily Press listed 8 youths, both male and female. These were also rumored to be the 8 strongest seedlings in the Yang realm. Among the youths, they were enough to represent the strongest voices of some powerful clans for tens of thousands of years. The Heaven Morning Post, on the other hand, took a different approach. It was very bold and considered the problem from a very special angle. It carried out an alternative report. Everyone's guesses are too conventional. In our opinion, it's very laughable. There's nothing new and no value. Now, let's uncover the truth. That youth is Chu Feng. When Chu Feng saw the astonishing circulation of the Heaven Morning Post, his fingers trembled. How could this work? They had directly locked onto him. Among the youths, who has a great enmity with the great martial heavenly lord, who would shed all pretense of cordiality to dig up his ancestral grave, who would risk universal condemnation to do such a thing. It's Chu Feng. He has reincarnated and come to the Yang realm. The timing is just right. Chu Feng was slightly startled. This newspaper was really daring. Although there were suspicions of deliberately being unconventional, what they said wasn't completely unreasonable. You're all wrong. Through the big data, there's been a very successful and powerful lineage that loves to play dirty. In particular, this lineage had once played dirty against the martial madman, the founder of the great martial lineage. These 2 lineages can be said to have a deep relationship. We believe that the killer has the style of Li Su in the past. This was the information from the black-blooded newspaper. It had to be said that the newspapers and platforms of the Yang realm were all very daring. In order to attract attention, they had come up with all kinds of different ideas. However, some of them were really close to the truth. This made Chu Feng wipe off his cold sweat. However, he soon stopped paying attention to these. Instead, he stared at the donkey spirit and was attracted by it. Gu Chenhai said, "What's wrong with this donkey? It seems to be possessed. Look at its blank eyes. It's in a daze, and its eyes are listless." In reality, Chu Feng had also noticed that the donkey spirit's words were a little strange. It made his heart tremble slightly. "Jidade, your style today feels familiar to me. I keep feeling like you're an old friend of mine, but why can't I remember?" The donkey spirit muttered to himself. As he spoke, he complained of a headache. He lifted a hoof and covered his temple. "It hurts so much. I keep feeling like my brain is covered by a layer of paper. It's about to be pierced through. Old Gu, what's going on with it?" Chu Feng was seriously suspicious and had a certain guess. Gu Chenhai was also bewildered. He carefully observed and swallowed a mouthful of saliva. "This seems like it remembers its past life. It's very rare. I feel that this is a creature that encountered an accident during its reincarnation. It should have come to this world with its memories." Afterward, he said excitedly, "It's too valuable to capture a reincarnator. Who knows, it might have a great background in its past life. Dade, quickly restrain it. We'll interrogate it in a while. Who knows, we might have a great harvest." Chu Feng's heart trembled violently. His eyes blazed with excitement, but he restrained himself and said, "It's just a donkey. What background can it have? It should have been a donkey in its past life, right?" Gu Chenhai said, "Nonsense. Once it reincarnates, it's very difficult to control the race it reincarnates into. Even if it was a fairy in its past life, it might reincarnate as a beast or a bird in its next life." Boom! It was at this time that the donkey's head shone, as if it had broken through some mysterious barrier. Its entire body trembled violently as it shouted, "I remember the netherworld. Afterward, it lowered its head to look at itself and cried out in disbelief, "How did I become like this? This isn't the original me." In a split second, Chu Feng was stirred up and his blood boiled. He really wanted to call it an old donkey because it really resembled that old friend. But why did it say that this donkey body wasn't its original self, and that it wasn't a donkey in its past life? Gu Chenhai suddenly shouted, "You've broken through the reincarnation barrier. Hurry up and tell us who you are and the secret at the bottom of your heart. Otherwise, you might immediately forget about it and be beaten back to your original form, forgetting your past life." It spoke very solemnly, and even Chu Feng was startled. But he quickly realized that this old fellow was doing this on purpose. He wanted to trick the donkey out of its heart. "Who am I? I'm not like this." In the ultimate land of reincarnation, Qin Luoyin, Qing Shi, the donkey said. For a moment, Chu Feng was dumbstruck. It was Qin Luoyin? He was so frightened that he almost jumped up. Gu Chenhai was even more so silent at first. Then the coffin violently throbbed. Then his breathing became hurried, and he almost erupted in anger. Impossible. In the prehistoric era, the goddess of the ancient dream path, the #1 beauty of the past, how could she reincarnate like this? Qing Shi was the fairy of the ancient dream path that Gu Chenhai couldn't forget. She was the #1 beauty of the prehistoric era, and her charm was exceptional. Old Gu had mentioned her more than once in front of Chu Feng. Now, Gu Chenhai was shocked by the scene in front of him. He was flustered and exasperated. Chapter 11:19. I'm back. Before I update, I'll tell you the reason why I didn't update for 2 days. I was sent to the hospital with a fever and severe bronchitis. Otherwise, I wouldn't have stopped updating like this. In the past, I always resisted going to the hospital whenever I was sick. This time, I couldn't go there directly. Thank you for making everyone wait. After recovering, he began to train his body and improve his constitution. The ancient dream path was destroyed, and the patriarch was forced to reverse the path of reincarnation. However, he was powerless against the martial madman. The entire Dao field was buried in time. I was sent to reincarnation by the patriarch and lost myself. The donkey spirit seemed to be talking in a dream. His face was full of sadness and shock. Chu Feng was dumbfounded and his body was trembling. This was simply unacceptable. Gu Chenhai was incomparably shocked and furious at first. Then, he started to shout loudly. Now, he was irritable and anxious. In the end, he had thousands of words in his heart, but nothing came out when he opened his mouth. In the end, he said in a hoarse voice, "I want to cry." The coffin shook. Gu Chenhai was furious. He simply couldn't take it anymore and looked as though he hated the heavens and earth. He had long since known that this donkey spirit was male. Then, he let out a muffled roar and released an indistinct prehistoric language that was difficult for ordinary people to understand. He vented his boundless anger. Even if you had an accident during your reincarnation, it would have been better if you were still a woman. No matter what race you are, there will be a time when you will cultivate into a human body. But now, I've waited for thousands of years to see you again, but Gu Chenhai was greatly agitated. He was boundlessly furious and was simply possessed. On the side, Chu Feng's heart had also turned cold. What was going on? Qin Luoyin had suffered a calamity and was actually like this after reincarnation. The little Taoist's mother had reincarnated into a beast. This caused Chu Feng's body to stiffen. When facing the donkey spirit, his emotions were too complicated. He really didn't know what to say. How should he greet him? It was said that the heavens were heartless and could sometimes be harsh to the point of cruelty. This scene was truly humiliating. Now, it seemed that the will of the heavens was difficult to fathom. Sometimes the terror of the reincarnation path wasn't just blood and bones. There was an even crueler thing, a murderous heart. During the battle back then, you entered the land of reincarnation and abandoned your future body. You traveled through time and space to return to the world of the living. What a pity, what a pity. The donkey spirit muttered to himself. He was dispirited and incomparably depressed. The anger in Gu Chenhai's heart soared. He thought of Qingshi from prehistoric times. He once had endless fantasies and looked forward to seeing her reincarnated body again. But now he wanted to erase this memory. I'm not afraid of losing face. Don't try to persuade me. I'll cry first, boo-hoo. Old Gu cried, extremely broken-hearted, sobbing quietly, incomparably emotional. He cried and cursed at the same time. If it wasn't for the prehistoric passing away, burying everything, how could things end up like this? In addition, he cursed the martial madman, saying that he was tyrannical and cruel, not even sparing the #1 beauty in the world. There was no enmity at all, yet he still went to kill. He cried endlessly, full of sorrow, as if he had nothing left to live for. He rolled about in the coffin, shaking this entire region until it rumbled, as if there was an earthquake or tsunami. Chu Feng's mood. There was no need to mention it. He didn't even know how to cry when his child's mother was in such a state. Yet this malicious spirit from prehistoric times was one step ahead of him and was wailing endlessly. How could he reason with this? What could he say even if he did? Chu Feng's heart felt as if a bottle of flavors had been knocked over. For a moment, all sorts of feelings, sweet, sour, bitter, spicy, and salty, surged into his heart. Logically speaking, he and Qin Luoyin had come together because of an accident. At first, they didn't experience those unforgettable feelings. They only experienced some things together later on. But after seeing everything in front of him, he still couldn't take it. Was this villainous heavens purposely torturing people? All right, stop crying. It's annoying to hear. Chu Feng slapped the coffin. He couldn't stand this old fellow. Logically speaking, he was the victim and the one who should be sad. In the end, all his tears had been shed by this malicious spirit. What was going on? You control the heavens and earth, and you even want me to cry? This old man is sad. My beauty of the past has fallen to such a state. I can't take it. I just want to cry. Go cry to the side. This is my sigh. Chu Feng really couldn't go on. Reuniting with an old friend was originally a joyous and exciting matter, but now he wanted nothing more than to smash his head against the ground. It would have been better if they hadn't met. If he didn't know, he wouldn't be so upset. However, Chu Feng couldn't cry. The main reason was that he seemed to have experienced this kind of thing once before. He recalled the old events in the foreign land. At that time, the little Taoist cried and said that everyone had died. He lied until his eyes turned red and couldn't help but shed silent tears. Don't tell me we're going to meet again today. Mother asterisk her. In just a split second, Chu Feng was no longer sad. He was a bit suspicious and grabbed the donkey spirit with one hand. He placed his hand on his forehead and wanted to take a closer look. What are you trying to do? The donkey spirit hadn't even resisted when old Gu became anxious. He let out an explosive shout and shook the earth and mountains. He rushed over with all his might to protect the donkey spirit. You've grown up a bit. You're already so old, yet you're still learning from others to be jealous. The more Chu Feng spoke, the angrier he became. It was fine if this wasn't Qin Luoyin, but if it really was, what right did this old ghost have to be jealous? He shouted, "You get as far away from me as you can. Little thief, you're too shameless. How dare you covet my beauty? I'll fight it out with you." Old Gu went all out. The coffin shone with a bloody light, and for a moment, his ferocity surged to the heavens. Chu Feng felt his kidneys hurt. What was this? Why was an unrelated ghost like you interfering? How could there be a place for you to meddle? Get lost, old Gu. I'm confirming whether this is Qin Luoyin or not. Don't stop me. Chu Feng pressed his hand on the donkey spirit's forehead and searched his mind. He wanted to get to the bottom of this. For a moment, he was dumbfounded. He saw the ultimate scene of the land of reincarnation and a glowing immortal figure. Was that Qin Luoyin? No, it was even more perfect than her. It was exquisite and flawless. This was the original appearance of a person after their soul light had been freed. Qingshi, it's really you. This old man's heart aches. Sob, sob, sob. Old Gu also came over. The coffin was pressed against the donkey spirit's head, and he saw this spiritual imprint. Old Gu pointed to the sky and swore, "Heavens above, Qingshi, this old man will definitely find the spirit transformation fruit for you. It can restore your female body and guarantee that fairy Qingshi will reappear in the world." In a split second, the donkey spirit shivered. He couldn't help but turn around and kick the coffin away. Moreover, he shouted, "You should keep the spirit transformation fruit for yourself. I'm fine like this." Bang! Chu Feng slapped the back of the donkey spirit's head. The spiritual imprint he saw earlier quickly faded away. Then he saw the various scenes inside. He saw the figures of the black yak, yellow cattle, Qin Luoyin, and the others. The donkey spirit let out an odd cry and quickly shook his head. He broke away from Chu Feng and scuttled away. He shouted, "Men and women shouldn't touch each other. What are you trying to do? I'm the former fairy Qingshi, the #1 beauty in the world. How dare you blaspheme me? Old Gu, hurry up and protect me." Damn it, there was indeed something strange. This was like seeing a ghost. Chu Feng was quite angry. Old Gu shook the coffin and said angrily, "Dade, you're going too far. How can I allow you to behave atrociously with me here?" Chu Feng wasn't angry after hearing this. On the contrary, he revealed a smile and said, "Old Gu, I see that you're also lonely and forsaken. Forget it. Take good care of the world's #1 beauty. I don't care anymore." He turned around and left. He sat in the distance and didn't even turn his head back. Qingshi, Old Gu was nauseating. He was thinking about where to find the spirit transformation fruit. This thing was too rare and precious. There were only 2 trees in the Yang realm. He didn't know whether they were still there or whether they had been cut down. Old Gu was very emotional and nauseating. He moved the coffin closer to the donkey spirit and dilly-dallied and touched it. In the end, the donkey spirit was annoyed and kicked it away with his hind leg. "I'm warning you, old ghost, I have nothing to do with you. Don't touch me." Old Gu moved forward again and told him about the past. He also explained that he went to steal Qingshi because he fell in love at first sight. However, he also paid the price and was beaten half to death. "Qingshi," Old Gu called out softly. That really gave people goosebumps. His voice was hoarse, and even Chu Feng couldn't help but rub his arms with all his might. F***CK. This grandpa can't take it anymore. I'll confess I'm guilty. I admit that I'm not fairy Qingshi. Old Gu, you damn pervert, get lost." In the end, the donkey spirit couldn't take it anymore. He couldn't pretend anymore and quickly admitted it himself. That was because he saw Old Gu's stickiness. The donkey hair all over his body was standing on end, and there were tens of thousands of goosebumps all over his body. If this continued, he reckoned that he would want to run away. "Tell me, who exactly are you?" Chu Feng spoke. He hadn't seen the thing in the depths of the donkey spirit's mind just now, so he couldn't determine which old friend it was. However, with such a shameless nature, he could lock onto 1 or 2 people. As for Old Gu's current state, it was really... Chapter 11:20. "Dade, who are you? Are you my brother Chu?" The donkey spirit ran over eagerly. He had a feeling that this should be Great Demon Chu. After recovering the memories of his past life, he thought of too many things. Then, based on Dade's various performances, his personality, as well as his methods of dealing with martial arts, there was no doubt that it was that person. In fact, he felt that Dade's various actions and speech were exactly the same as Great Demon Chu Feng's in the Netherworld. The only thing that made him feel strange was that this tender youth's face was actually very similar to Chu Feng's past life. He had already reincarnated, so how could this be? This was really strange. For a moment, he suspected that this was a trap and that someone was doing this on purpose. But after thinking about it, he felt that it shouldn't be so. He had only reincarnated as a donkey. So who would target him? And who are you? Hurry up and confess before I cut you up. The corners of Chu Feng's mouth twitched as he ground his teeth. That was because the donkey spirit was too hateful. He was making fun of him. Of course, Old Gu's mood was even worse than his. He was dumbfounded and sat in the coffin without moving. He was a bit numb. What was going on? For a moment, he couldn't accept it. Where was Fairy Qingshi? Why did she fly away? Who is this? Mother asterisk her. He wanted to kill someone. After old Goo woke up, he began to move the coffin towards the donkey spirit. He wanted to fight to the death with this donkey. He had to settle the score. This was intolerable. The donkey spirit was a step ahead and said, "Old Goo, stay on the side. If you dare to stick to me again, I'll fight you to the death. I'll fight you to the death." Old Goo roared angrily. He was about to go mad. Today he had experienced great joy, great sorrow, and great disappointment. His entire mentality was about to collapse. "Dade, Chu Feng, save me. Old Goo has gone mad. I'm really not Fairy Qing sure." The donkey spirit cried out miserably. Chu Feng hurriedly moved and forcibly separated them. "Stupid donkey, shut up. I naturally know you're not her. I'm punishing you. Old Goo, you are angry out of humiliation. Where's your previous clinginess?" The donkey spirit shouted. Ping ling ping lang. This place was in chaos. If the donkey spirit had not shouted out Chu Feng's name several times, Gu Chenhai would not have given up. At this moment, his mind was spinning endlessly in the coffin. He felt a little confused, but in the end, he had more or less figured it out. Suddenly, he had encountered two reincarnators. This kind of thing was really unreasonable. How many reincarnators were there in the entire Yang realm? Sometimes, one might not even meet one in dozens of lifetimes. Today, he actually met two at once. This could be considered a miracle. Especially G-Dade, that bastard. Didn't he encounter a reincarnation hunter? To be able to avoid detection and get through safely, what was going on? Old Goo felt that his brain wasn't enough to process it. The main reason was that he was so angry today that he couldn't stand it anymore. The donkey spirit was well-behaved and drooped his head. After being beaten up by Chu Feng, he was now grimacing in pain. Chu Feng was already convinced that this was an old friend, a reincarnator. After the donkey broke through the reincarnation barrier in his heart and recalled his past life, he clearly sensed the aura of reincarnation. That was an indescribable energy nourishing the donkey spirit's body. Others couldn't feel it, but Chu Feng could. Back when he had faced the young lady protected by Dong Qing, he had felt this because he was a reincarnator of the flesh. This was like a unique talent of this life. "Brother, it's me, the Siberian tiger, the Manchurian tiger, your brother tiger." The donkey spirit laughed there. After he cracked open his mouth, he actually had a dignified and valiant appearance. Of course, no matter how his temperament changed, he was still a donkey. Chu Feng felt his kidney hurt again. He knew that this was either the old donkey Lu Feiyong, the Manchurian tiger, or the toad. These three couldn't escape. Moreover, among the suspects, Chu Feng felt that Lu Feiyong and the Manchurian tiger were more like the Manchurian tiger. The former was greedy for life and afraid of death, while the latter had no moral integrity. Back then, during the battle under Kunlun, the Manchurian tiger was called the Siberian tiger and stood on the side of the Western Allied Army. In the end, when he saw that the situation wasn't right, he immediately betrayed them. He called himself the Manchurian tiger and belonged to the Eastern camp. He followed the Western Schiller, the Black Dragon, and the others. "I knew it was you." Chu Feng scolded him. "Brother, don't be angry. What I said was true. I'm mainly guarding against old Goo. This grandson is too despicable. He actually dares to set his sights on sister-in-law. Regardless of whether it's Fairy Qingshi or Luoyin, they're not people this old bastard can touch. I just want to teach him a lesson." The Manchurian tiger said with a sullen expression. Old Goo became anxious after hearing this and wanted to fight it out with him. "I really saw Fairy Qingshi in the land of reincarnation. She remembered her past life, and that expression was too complicated. She's known as the prehistoric number one, and her talents are world-shaking. She actually lost her way and gave birth to a child." "Wait a moment. What did you say?" Old Goo was anxious and coughing violently at the same time. He had received too much shock. This news made his chest feel so stuffy that he almost fainted. "Go to the side. I'm annoyed." The Manchurian tiger didn't want to pay attention to him. "What are you annoyed about? Tell me clearly, where's Qingshi? How did she give birth? Where is she?" Old Goo was about to go berserk. The Manchurian tiger said angrily, Didn't you see that Grandpa Tiger's face is disfigured? I'm about to go crazy, and you're still annoying me? He was originally a tiger, but now he was a donkey. He was indeed enraged, especially when he thought about how he had become like this. He became even angrier and continuously scolded the old donkey Lu Feiyang. Old Gu roared, "Are you crazy? This old man is going crazy. Don't change the topic. Let me tell you, if this old man goes crazy, even this old man will be afraid." Following which, he said angrily, "How are you disfigured? You're a donkey with a donkey's brain. Don't you look like this from the start?" The Manchurian tiger put on a long face and said, "Nonsense. I'm a tiger, the true Tiger King. I'm awe-inspiring and murderous." "Stupid donkey. You don't even know what you are anymore, do you?" Old Gu roared. "I F***CKU." The Manchurian tiger was so angry that he kicked his hind legs. He thought of his experience in the ultimate land of reincarnation. The brothers were very sad and sorrowful at the moment of parting. He didn't know when they would meet again after this separation. Yellow Ox, the Black Yak, Ouyang Feng, and the others all wished each other well. At that time, the old donkey, Lu Feiyang, hugged the Manchurian tiger's neck and said, "Brother Tiger, let's be brothers in our next life. This old donkey has decided on you. Even though I'm greedy for life and afraid of death, I can die for you." The Manchurian tiger was also very excited. He put his arm around Lu Feiyang's shoulder and said, "Old donkey, it's enough to hear you say that. We're still brothers. I'm willing to be reincarnated as a donkey in my next life and be brothers with you. I'm happy." The old donkey patted his shoulder and pulled his hand, repeatedly praising him for being loyal. The Manchurian tiger was very happy and said, "Good brother." Then he met with tragedy. At the final juncture, he remembered Fairy Qingshir's solemn warning from his previous life. Those who charged through the reincarnation realm with talismans in their hands had obsessions in their hearts. They swore that they would reincarnate into whatever they were. The Manchurian tiger's eyes stared straight back then, but it was already too late. Half of his body had already fallen into the whirlpool of reincarnation. At that time, he raised his head and glanced over. The old donkey's eyes were shining. He hadn't even stepped into the whirlpool yet, but he was already muttering something. He said that he came from a scholarly aristocratic family and wanted to be a scholar. F***CK your lungs, you donkey's dung egg. This was the Manchurian tiger's resentment in his final moments. He knew that it was too late. He had been tricked by that donkey into saying that he wanted to be reincarnated as a donkey, but that donkey himself wanted to run off to become a scholar. At this moment, the Manchurian tiger couldn't bear it any longer. He told the sad story of his reincarnation, leaving Chu Feng flabbergasted. "You're saying that the old donkey patted your shoulder, pulled your hand, and said that you were loyal. He tricked you into becoming a donkey, and then in the blink of an eye, he reincarnated to become a scholar?" "Yes, that bastard. I'm so angry." The Manchurian tiger howled. He simply couldn't bear it when he thought of the past. Chapter 1121. Chu Feng was speechless. He felt that this old donkey was too cruel. How could he do things like this? Gu Dao was warm-hearted and incomparably affectionate. He patted his chest and talked about brotherhood. But in the end, he tricked the Manchurian tiger into reincarnating as a donkey. On the other hand, he changed his mind and became a scholar. This was too immoral. After hearing this, Gu Chenhai jumped and clapped his hands in delight. He didn't pity the Manchurian tiger at all and directly commented, "Serves you right." The Manchurian tiger said angrily, "Old Gu, do you still have any morals? Have you been eaten by a donkey?" "God damn it, not eaten by a donkey. I'm about to die from anger," Old Gu said with a gloomy expression. "I also hate donkeys. This isn't my true body. Can you do me a favor? You don't understand Qingshi? No problem, I'll tell you." The Manchurian tiger stated his conditions. They had long since left the ground and found a place with beautiful spring sunshine and green grass. The Manchurian tiger looked at a lake and felt sorry for himself. His face was dejected. At this moment, he was a donkey with a donkey's head. He was truly depressed. You can even find the spirit transformation fruit for male and female transformations. I think it won't be a problem for you to find me a fruit that can change my appearance, right? I want to return to the tiger race. Old Goo immediately roared. You still want to transform into a tiger? There are bloodline fruits, and I know a place that produces them. Exotic, desolate grade fruits. But I won't give them to you even if you beat me to death. If you want, I can give you the spirit transformation fruit and let you change your nature. Be at ease as a donkey, you stupid donkey. Damn, you old ghost. You haven't heard of Grandpa Tiger's fame, have you? The whole universe knows. You frog in a well. I'll let you understand that the great Manchurian Tiger King can't be provoked. The two began to fight, but the Manchurian tiger was completely defeated. He was frightened by the surging blood energy of the stone coffin and immediately fled behind Chu Feng to seek protection. Stop shouting, Brother Tiger. Tell me about your situation on the path of reincarnation, said Chu Feng. Luoyin was too shocking. She awakened in the ultimate land of reincarnation with millions of rays of auspicious light that illuminated the entire ancient land. She once said to herself that the clay idol was actually still there. These words made our hair stand on end. The Manchurian tiger recounted the events of the past. The clay idol that Qingshi was talking about was naturally the one at the end of the path of reincarnation. The talisman papers were all sacrificed to it there. Unfortunately, Qingshi didn't say much and didn't explain anything. Qingshi, I'm waiting for you in the world of the living. Come back quickly. Old Goo called out in a timely manner. You audacious old bastard who wants to seduce sister-in-law. What are you trying to do? Get lost. Chu Feng felt that this was a disgusting situation. Old Goo stomped his feet and shouted, G-Dade, Chu Feng, you're a reincarnation smuggler. I'm going to report you and tell the reincarnation hunters to come and arrest you. Chu Feng threatened, if you dare to shout again, I will directly send you back to Yin Manor and you will never be able to come out again. The Manchurian tiger continued to narrate the events of the past. After awakening, Qingshi deduced that such a small amount of talisman paper was not enough to protect so many of them. Therefore, their reincarnations might be flawed, and it would be difficult for them to awaken immediately. Perhaps they would only be able to remember their past lives after many years. From the looks of it, it was indeed true. Luoyin really became Fairy Qingshi. What happened to her specifically? Chu Feng asked. Although she still thinks of us and cares for us, we feel that she suddenly became faintly discernible like a fairy standing above the clouds. It makes people feel ashamed of their inferiority. However, she is still very good to your parents and us. When she mentioned your child, she was slightly sentimental. Child? Gu Chenhai suddenly went berserk and wanted to fight with his life on the line. He was almost insane. You old vinegar jar, what are you jealous of? What does it have to do with you? Ouch. The Manchurian tiger refuted him, but in the end, he let out a strange cry and kicked back in pain. Chu Feng used a lot of strength to suppress the stone coffin with reincarnation earth. Chu Feng threatened, that's my wife, and we even have a child. Stop thinking about her. If you dare to let your imagination run wild again, I will immediately throw you into the extreme martial clan's ancestral grave. Nonsense. You should have seen it clearly in the ancient dream path. Qingshi was rescued by the patriarch, and a wisp of her soul entered the forbidden area. After a long time, she succeeded in reincarnating with great difficulty, but she was lost. Her relationship with you was an accident. No matter what, she is the mother of my child. You. Gu Chenhai felt as if he had been struck by a violent blow, as if he had been slashed by 10,000 knives. The Manchurian tiger whispered, Chu Feng, brother, my sister-in-law told us before she reincarnated that she was Qin Luoyin in her previous life, and she is Qingshi in this life. Her fate with you is over. She has her pursuits and her path. Luoyin is only a small part of her long life, just a wave, a ripple. The past will be gone with the wind, so please forget her. Chu Feng was startled when he heard this. Gu Chenhai immediately became excited and trembled with excitement. He cried out, this is Qingshi. Even though she suffered hardships and unfortunately had an unbearable past in the little underworld, she is still able to let go. She did not get angry, did not complain, and just calmly let go of the past. This is her, a true fairy, worthy of being the person I like. When Chu Feng heard this, he was so angry that he directly used the heavenly Bloodstar Space Mother Gold short sword to hack at it. He hacked at the stone coffin, and sparks flew everywhere. Gu Chenhai cried out, "Ji Dade, don't be unconvinced. What kind of person is Qing Shi? She is the most talented person in prehistoric times. What can disturb her fundamental heart? Nothing. The short period of time in the underworld is indeed insignificant in her life." So, Gu Chenhai dilly-dallied. In the future, Gu Chenhai had a glib tongue. In the end, he was already foaming at the mouth in the coffin, but he still kept talking. "She is the mother of my child." Chu Feng only said this. Can't you say something else?" Gu Chenhai suddenly flew into a rage. "Fine, I'll say something else. If we meet again one day, where she likes me with Qingshi's identity." Chu Feng asked with his head lowered as he stepped on the stone coffin with one foot. "Disappear." Gu Chenhai flew into a rage out of humiliation. Next, they went on their way. They quarreled and fought along the way. But in the end, they reached a consensus. They both wanted to become stronger. During this process, Gu Chenhai threatened to report Chu Feng as a reincarnation smuggler. Chu Feng threatened him, saying that he could throw him into famous mountains, great rivers, and other special terrains at any time and trap him for a lifetime, never to be reincarnated. No wonder you can't rest until Tai Wu is dead. So you are Chu Feng. On the way, old Gu came back to his senses. He could understand many things in the past. Then, he inquired for information with a deep meaning and said, "That's right. Where's the ultimate treasure that Tai Wu wants to search for when he enters the underworld?" Chu Feng curled his lips and said, "Don't think about it. After stepping into reincarnation, you will only be left with a soul light to reincarnate. What can you bring back? If you want it, you can reincarnate into the underworld. I left it on Earth." "You wastrel." Gu Chenhai lamented bitterly and felt as if his heart was dripping blood. He felt that any one of the ultimate treasures in the legends of the Yang realm could suppress the world. Passing by like this would be a regret that would last for eternity. Gu Chenhai beat his chest and stamped his feet. "What a pity. Brat, you will regret it one day. You will cry day and night in your old age for missing out on such a treasure." Then he said, "Chu Feng, little devil, don't say that I didn't give you a chance. I want to fight for a lifetime's fortune. Do you dare to go? This is a battle between true enemies. Love rival my ass." Chu Feng looked at him from the corner of his eyes. He really wanted to kick this coffin to pieces, but in the end he endured it. He curled his lips and pretended not to care. He said, "What fortune? Where is it? Tell me." Gu Chenhai slapped the coffin and shouted, "Become a heavenly venerable overnight, and even transform into an almighty. Do you dare to go with me and cross the immortal waterfall?" "So domineering? What kind of damn place is that? Are you trying to trick me?" Chu Feng was disdainful. He reckoned that this old ghost was holding back his fart. "Do you think I, Gu Chenhai, am that kind of person? You can go online and check. There is a heavenly waterfall in the Yang realm. Any evolved race with a bit of background knows about this place." Chu Feng immediately went to check and was immediately shocked. He then shouted, "Okay, what are you waiting for? Let's go." That was because there really was such a place. The introduction on the internet was very mysterious. There had even been ultimate powerhouses who walked out of that place. Gu Chenhai said, "Okay, let's go immediately." Looking at the time, there will be another immortal waterfall whistling. There will be a grand meeting. The Skyfall antecedent waterfall could be seen on normal days, but it would only appear once in a while, during a special period of time. They used the divine magnetic platform to continuously cross the void. After a few days, they finally approached the heavenly waterfall. A waterfall that led straight to the outer realm fell from the heavens and reached the Yang realm. The sound was like thunder. The long waterfall was golden and had existed since ancient times. It was so majestic and spectacular that Chu Feng was petrified. He couldn't say anything for a long time. The stone coffin had already shrunk and was covered in reincarnation soil. Others couldn't find it, so Chu Feng put it in his sleeve. The Manchurian tiger hated the donkey's body. He transformed into a young man with red lips and white teeth and followed Chu Feng. He was originally very beautiful and handsome, but he had two shortcomings. One was that he was born with a pair of very long and conspicuous ears and two large front teeth. It couldn't be helped. He was reincarnated as a donkey, so he more or less carried some of his race's characteristics after transforming. Apart from them, there were quite a few people here. The great clans of the Yang realm all knew of this place. Those who could come here were all members and disciples of powerful orthodoxies. Where did this originate from? Did it descend from beyond the heavens? Chu Feng asked in a low voice. He didn't startle the people nearby. The dust on some evolvers' bodies had condensed into armor-like lumps. A thick layer covered their original appearance. It was unknown how many years they had been sitting there. It was as if they no longer had any signs of life and had completely turned into fossils. There were also some people wearing ancient clothes. Even though they weren't tainted by dust, their clothes had already rotted. However, they were still breathing. There was a powerful blood energy hidden within their flesh. Clearly, their vitality was still exuberant, but they had definitely been sitting here for many years. Beside the heavenly waterfall, there were a few primal chaos holes. The people sitting inside were unfathomable, distorting time and space to form a whirlpool like the eye of the sea. It became their place of life and death seclusion. Apart from these experts, there were also many youths and young men and women. They were all representatives of the most powerful races that entered here. They were all elites. Among them were people that Chu Feng recognized. For example, some of the little friends he suppressed in the desolate border dragon nest back then had already grown up and become young men and women. Chu Feng laughed dryly. If he really recognized them, would those people fulfill their agreement and call him Big Brother? Apart from this, the Fowarok, Phoenix Fairy, White Feather, and the others he met in the Gray Transaction area were also here. It was to the extent where Chu Feng even saw Zhong Xiao. The extreme martial lineage's core inheritor that had escaped a calamity had a pair of golden wings on his back. He possessed the primal chaos demonic bloodline. If there were no accidents, he was the strongest among the core disciples of the extreme martial lineage who were of similar age. Apart from these people, there were also many outstanding heroes. Their identities weren't simple at all. Some of the men had outstanding bearing and were incomparably refined and elegant. They wore white socks that weren't tainted by dust. Meanwhile, there were a few women that were like Jade Lake fairies. They didn't eat the food of mortals. Their clothes were whiter than snow, elegant and otherworldly. This made Chu Feng astonished. These people definitely had great origins. Their backgrounds weren't simple. He became more and more certain that this heavenly waterfall was extremely terrifying. It actually attracted so many creatures with astonishing talents. Suddenly, he was startled. He saw a young girl in the distance. She looked 11 or 12 years old, clear and tranquil. Was that Linoy? No, it was the little girl he saw in the desolate border dragon nest back then. Now that she had grown up, she really looked like Linoy. Was this her or her daughter? Suddenly, Chu Feng found another familiar person, Ingwudi, an old friend from the Lilian realm. He actually saw him from afar. Did his sister, the silver-haired little Lolita, Ing Xiao Xiao, also come? Did Ing Zhixian also appear here? Chapter 1122. Granny Ming's Soup. A bowl of soup reverses yin and yang, molds the foundation, strengthens the soul, and cuts the shackles to build a bridge that leads straight to the end of the mist region. There was an old woman with a stooped body. She was extremely short, no more than 5 meters tall. She was as thin as a match, and her skin was dark and dark. Her eye sockets were sunken, and her face was full of wrinkles. Her lips were purple, and her teeth were almost all gone. She was peddling the famous Granny Meng's soup in the Yang realm. It was the most nourishing for the body and soul. There was a bridge there with a stone arch. Its style was extremely ancient, and it wasn't small. It could be said to be grand and ancient. It had experienced the baptism of time. The bridge was not far from the heavenly immortal waterfall, lying on the surface of the river. There was only one old woman on the bridge, and she was peddling Granny Meng's soup. She was doing business here, and she wore old clothes as if she had crawled out from an ancient tomb many years ago. This business is actually still here. Within Chu Feng's sleeve, Gu Chenhai, who was in the heavenly gold sarcophagus, felt his heart tremble. He sucked in a breath of cold air and was deeply shocked. It existed since prehistoric times? Asked Chu Feng. This was quite astonishing. Gu Chenhai nodded and said, yes, there was this business back then. However, the one selling Granny Meng's soup wasn't her, but someone else. The two of them communicated secretly, but they weren't worried about being discovered by experts. This was because Chu Feng placed his hand on the small sarcophagus and didn't need to spread his divine sense too far. Moreover, this was the location of the heavenly immortal waterfall. All experts' perception would be sharply weakened by the special mist that pervaded the majestic golden waterfall. It was indescribably terrifying, and the degree of decline was extremely great. Gu Chenhai was horrified. This unfathomable organization from back then had actually crossed countless years and all kinds of tribulations to appear in this world. He could even see that the black glaze bowl in the old woman's hand was still the same one from back then. It was pitch black and terrifying, and there were complex and strange symbols carved on it. "Auntie, how much for a bowl?" asked a young woman in her 20s. Her appearance was pure and delicate, and her eyes were clear. She wore a moon-white dress that fluttered in the wind, and she looked like a fairy that was about to ride the wind and return. "1 tael of mother gold for a bowl of soup," said the old woman. She stood on the bridge and grinned. She only had 1 or 2 teeth left. The elegant lady sighed. She bowed slightly before turning around to leave. Things like mother gold were too rare. This was a strategic resource that could be used to forge ultimate weapons. It was hard to find even in this world. Who got it would meld it into their clan's weapon. Of Granny Meng. Chu Feng was speechless after hearing this. A bowl of Meng Pa soup was so expensive that it required 1 tael of mother gold to exchange for it. It was too much. It's still the same price, and it smells the same. How many years has it been? The prices have soared, but it hasn't changed. It's a good price. Gu Chenhai was actually sighing, saying that he had drunk a bowl of it in the past. Chu Feng really wanted to spit at him. How is this not too expensive? And he Meng and Gu and Meng, Meng and said, and Meng and Meng and Gu. Old Gu said indignantly, "Brat, you finally know now, right? How much mother gold did you rob from me back then? You stole 5 to 6 pots of Granny Meng's soup." Chu Feng didn't know how valuable Granny Meng's soup was. This thing can supplement the foundation and nourish the soul light and body. It doesn't have any side effects. Of course, it's worth a lot, said old. Chu Feng rubbed his face, trying to make himself look less and less like the original Chu Feng in order to avoid being recognized. In truth, he had already changed himself before coming here. He had used his domain techniques to change his appearance. "Annie, do you accept other things in exchange other than mother gold? For example, sky gold stone." When old Gu heard Chu Feng's question, he was immediately choking with anger. This little bastard hated him for always mentioning Qingshi not long ago. He used the heavenly blood-starry sky mother golden sword to madly chop the stone coffin. Chu Feng had embezzled the peeled stone skin and taken it for his own. Now he was actually taking it out to buy Meng Po's soup. Little thief. Old circulated his chi and puffed out white smoke from his nose. It can be exchanged. 1 tael of mother gold is equivalent to 10 taels of sky gold stone. The old woman grinned. Chu Feng felt that her wrinkled skin was about to rot and fall off at any moment. It was a little scary. At the same time, he was astonished that this sky gold stone was so valuable. It could be exchanged with mother gold at a ratio of 10 to 1. This was beyond his expectations. Thinking about it carefully, old used a sky gold stone coffin to bury himself. That was quite extravagant and gorgeous. "All right, Annie, I understand. When I have money, I'll definitely come and buy 2 bowls of Granny Mang's soup. I'll drink one and pour the other. I'll go all out. Old was furious after hearing this. He knew that this little thief had ready-made sky gold stone on him. They were all chopped off from his body. He would come here to buy soup sooner or later. This area was too vast. The waterfall that reached the sky was extremely spectacular. It fell from the outer realm with a terrifying momentum. It was like a golden river of stars pouring down in torrents and never extinguishing. Apart from the stone arch bridge in front of them, there were some simple stone pavilions in the distance. Coarse stones were piled up simply and looked very primitive. There were many people there, ranging from the old to the strong to the young. There was no limit to their age. All of them were here. It was actually a simple and crude market square. There were people in the shabby and crude stone pavilions. They were placed on stone tables for people to view and trade. There were even some straw mats outside the primitive stone buildings. Some people were sitting cross-legged and selling some strange items. Chu Feng's heart stirred. He walked over because he saw the Rock Emperor, the Phoenix Fairy, and some other evolvers he knew walking over. Soon after, Zhong Xiao, Ing Wudi, and the others approached. Following that, Linoy also appeared. She walked over and picked out some items. 2 old men followed behind her to ensure her safety at all times. Although she was only 11 or 12 years old, she was already ethereal and elegant. She had an indescribable, immortal aura, like a fairy that had descended into the world. Chu Feng's heart trembled. The young girl's bearing was very pure, but there was also a faint heavenly might on her body. It was faintly emitted through icy skin and jade bones. Only a physical reincarnator like him could sense it. Chu Feng was apprehensive. What had happened to this girl who was suspected to be Lin Naoi or her daughter? He thought of the figure he saw in the Samsara Ultimate Ancient Palace. Her clothes fluttered in the wind, and her bearing was peerless and incomparable. In that ancient palace, there were many imprints of people who had passed through reincarnation. They were engraved into the ancient palace. Even Chu Feng was forced to leave a mark there. Because of this, he carved a sentence. How lonely it is to be invincible. She's very similar to that figure in the land of Samsara. Although she's still slightly immature and inexperienced, her bearing and aura are exactly the same. It can be said to be divine. How could Chu Feng not be shocked? Could it be that she really was that exceptionally graceful woman he saw in the Samsara Palace? It was unknown which evolutionary civilization she was born in. Either way, it was an extremely long time ago. She had previously passed through reincarnation. Could it be that she had successfully reincarnated again? He suspected that as time went on, this young girl's body would be fully displayed. She would completely display that woman's bearing and heavenly might. Not simple. The radiance in Chu Feng's eyes flickered continuously. He stared at her figure from far away. Was this Linoy or her daughter? From the time that had passed, it should be the latter. In the distance, that young girl's divine senses were too sharp. The instant Chu Feng moved sideways, she turned around and looked in his direction. It was clear that she sensed that someone was looking at her. He was almost discovered. This left Chu Feng deeply astonished. This type of divine senses was too astonishing. He had already suppressed all types of auras, and there weren't any fluctuations at all. Yet, she could still sense it. He believed that this wasn't a normal divine sense, but a kind of instinct. That was because the dense mist emitted by the immortal waterfall here suppressed everyone's spirit. Yeah, she really came. Chu Feng discovered Ing Zhixian. She had a graceful figure and a beautiful appearance. She could be said to be an outstanding beauty. At the same time, she had a faint sense of otherworldliness. She was like a fairy that had been punished and reincarnated into the human world. She was ethereal and hazy. Her entire body was enveloped in a faint white mist, giving people a feeling that she was unapproachable and otherworldly. Her appearance hadn't changed over the years. Moreover, her temperament was even more outstanding. She could be considered a well-known figure in the Yin realm. After coming to the Yang realm, she had undergone a qualitative transformation. A myriad of thoughts ran through Chu Feng's mind. He didn't know how the other old friends who had entered the Yang realm were doing. Did they also have a rare encounter? Zilwan, Yuan Mo, Jiang Luoshin, Daoist Jin Lin, Shi Hong. There were too many people, and he didn't know where they were scattered. Chu Feng rubbed his face again to make himself more and more unfamiliar. Even if he met someone he knew, it would be difficult to distinguish them, because there were some people here that he really couldn't trust. Old Gu, did you see that those divine sons and disciples of celestial venerables have Tao protectors and divine kings following them to protect them? Is it all right for me to appear like this? Do you think you can rely on just yourself? Although I really want to slice you up and study why you're bad from head to toe, that's a different matter. Since you've agreed to give me a bit of soul flesh, I'll sell it to you for the next few years. I'll be responsible for fighting bloody battles for you. Even if divine kings come to provoke me, I'll fight and suppress them while bathed in blood. Gu Chenhai replied, for the sake of soul flesh, he could let go of any prejudices. Even though he had been cheated by Chu Feng, who was his strongest love rival, he still wouldn't refuse. This was because his big brother had been searching for this substance back then, but couldn't find it. One had to know that Li Su was unrivaled throughout the world. What good things had he not seen? He even dared to lay his hands on an ultimate treasure and dare to snatch it. Only soul flesh would be his eternal regret. He believed in his big brother's foresight, so he wanted a piece of soul flesh no matter what. He had a certain amount of confidence. He had evolved rapidly in the extreme martial ancestral tomb, and his strength had increased greatly. Although he was still far from his former self, he was confident that he could contend against divine kings without fear. Of course, don't take the initiative to cause trouble. At the very least, you can't anger the existence in the eyes of primal chaos. Old Gu warned. He was rather apprehensive. Next to the immortal waterfall, there were a few whirlpools like the eyes of the sea. The primal chaos was swirling there, and there was an indescribably terrifying figure sitting cross-legged within. Old Goose seriously suspected that there was a celestial venerable sitting cross-legged there, and there might even be an almighty being sitting there in seclusion. Chu Feng approached the stone pavilion. What kind of trash was being sold here? He was a bit dumbstruck. For example, there was a pitch-black conch that was a bit damaged, but it was placed openly on the stone table. Don't miss this chance. This is a heavenly object that rushed down from the immortal waterfall. Once refined into a secret treasure, its power is immeasurable. In the past, someone refined a world-shocking magic conch. After blowing it, 3 great clans were slaughtered overnight, shocking the Yang realm. The seller was a middle-aged man who was earnestly hawking. His words were fairly confident, as if he was promoting a world-suppressing treasure. To the side, in a crude stone pavilion, an old man disdainfully glanced at them, then unhurriedly introduced his own items. Do you see the damaged stone pot? Even though it's missing half of its spout and isn't complete, its origins are incredible. This is a heavenly object that emerged from the immortal waterfall. It isn't something that some seashells or driftwood can compare to. If it's repaired, it might become an ultimate object. The old man's words were calm. He raised the 4-inch stone pot and said with a serious expression, "Do you all know that our Yang realm has an ultimate treasure that is also made of stone? Even though it has already disappeared in the passage of time, its legend, its glory, and its unparalleled offensive power are still being passed down among the ultimate experts. It is known as a weapon that shakes the Yang realm and suppresses several eras." These words were very tempting to the evolvers who had just entered this place. All of them stopped in their tracks because they had indeed heard the patriarch of their sect comment on some weapons in the history of evolution. He had mentioned such an ancient weapon that was suspected to be made of stone, but he didn't go into detail. Do you all know about the so-called immortal burial era? If it wasn't for that ancient weapon suppressing the Yang realm, we would have failed. We completely relied on it to defeat the immortals and bury them in the dust of history. Chu Feng was doubtful. Wasn't there a kind of speculation that the immortals might not have been defeated, but were just isolated in another space? In the end, it wasn't even certain whether the Yang realm won. The old man said, "You all should know that the unparalleled weapon I mentioned just now, the ultimate treasure that is said to be able to suppress the immortals, came from this sky-high waterfall. Although the stone pot in my hand is damaged, if it is repaired, who dares to say that it isn't the second supreme treasure?" Chu Feng was speechless when he heard this. He tapped the small coffin in his sleeve and asked old Gu if the artifacts here were reliable. In prehistoric times, there were also such fissures here. Some of them are indeed items that came from the sky-high waterfall, but to pass off fish eyes as pearls, one has to rely on their own eyesight. It's hard to say in this era. I don't know how trustworthy the people of this era are. Many people gathered at the old man's stall. Some evolvers went up to investigate the stone pot. Many people frowned and remained silent. This thing was indeed an old object. Moreover, there were complicated and unfathomable Great Tao runes carved inside. However, they were rather incomplete and faintly discernible. Chu Feng looked around. Many stalls were filled with people, including Linoi, Emperor Rock, Ingwudi, and Zhongxiao. They were all choosing and wanted to buy. Old Gu, why do I feel that the artifacts here aren't simple? Moreover, many people really want to buy them? Of course. If you hold an artifact fished out from the immortal waterfall, you'll get twice the results with half the effort if you meditate and evolve in the waterfall. This is the conclusion of our predecessors. There was actually such a reason. Chu Feng came to a sudden realization. No wonder this place was so popular. All evolvers who came here wanted to find suitable objects. Suddenly, a noise came from afar as a large group of evolvers swarmed over. Mother Gold Cauldron. Ah, there's actually such an item. Regardless of whether it's real or fake, just its material alone is enough to show disdain for everything here. This item is priceless. Heavens, this is actually Mother Gold of Time. This ultimate material is even rarer than other Mother Gold. It's difficult for it to appear even once in many eras. Exclamations rose and fell in the distance, causing a huge commotion. There was only a straw mat at the stall, and a middle-aged woman was sitting cross-legged on it. Her mouth was tightly shut, and she didn't say anything. She was relying on the item to attract people. No one had expected such an artifact to appear. In people's impressions, 9 of the artifacts here were fake and 1 was real. Most of them were imitations. Now, someone had taken out a cauldron refined from Mother Gold of Time. It was too shocking. Even if it was fake, it was still frightening and terrifying enough. Not to mention them, even the Almighty would covet this material. According to legend, Mother Gold of Time contained fragments of time and had corresponding traces of the Great Tao, nourished by flesh and blood all year round and fused with soul light. One could comprehend the power of time. Who didn't care? This kind of material was too shocking. Not to mention making a weapon, even the original embryo would make people jealous. Even a founder of a sect would fight over it. In the end, a fist-sized cauldron appeared in this kind of place. How could it not cause a commotion? This cauldron was fished out from the heaven-reaching waterfall, said that middle-aged woman. She only said this sentence and didn't say anything else. The simple and unadorned cauldron was curled up with the power of time. Even though it was simple and unadorned, there was an astonishing halo on the outside. At this moment, the fist-sized small cauldron fell into Ying Zhexian's hands. She was carefully observing it while the others surrounded it. They were all waiting to personally examine it. Chapter 11:23. Chu Feng also walked forward and stood outside the crowd. He carefully felt the power of time and narrowed his eyes as if he was in a chaotic flow of time. This furnace was simply too precious and priceless. Not to mention the others. Even Chu Feng wanted to sneak up on them and rob them. He didn't even need to think about it. It was impossible for him to obtain this treasure. This thing was enough to make celestial venerables and even almighty figures jealous. He couldn't understand who the middle-aged woman was. Why would she put such a creation artifact on a mat and sell it in a stall? Normally, no evolver would be willing to part with it. Who would sell it? They would definitely keep it for themselves. This thing was too rare. It was time Mother Gold. The great Tao fragments it contained were too terrifying. One couldn't find a second one in many eras. In Chu Feng's sleeve, Gu Chenhai, who was inside the heavenly gold sarcophagus, was dumbstruck. He secretly swallowed his saliva and wondered if that woman was a fool. She was actually asking for takeaway. At this moment, Ying Zhixian was holding the simple yet radiant furnace. Her eyes were clear, and there was a faint white mist on her peerless face as if it was covered by a veil. She looked at it carefully for a long time. Her beautiful eyes were no longer tranquil, and there was a faint divine glow. Even someone as calm as her was slightly excited. This was a true time furnace. It could be expected that even the quasi-saint race's old patriarch would be shocked if he learned of this. He would certainly do everything he could to obtain this furnace. What does Senior need? Ying Zhixian hadn't opened her mouth yet, but an old servant behind her couldn't help but ask. It could be seen that Ying Zhixian was also very concerned. Her fingers were as translucent as white jade, delicate and slender. They were very beautiful as she held the time furnace with all her might. You're from the quasi-saint race. I heard that you possess the wonderful 7 treasures technique. You can use this technique to exchange, the middle-aged woman said bluntly. Everyone gasped and then sighed. Such a time furnace was priceless no matter what. It could be considered a treasure of the Yang realm. People originally thought she was stupid, which was why she would sell it. Now it seemed that the middle-aged woman clearly knew its value. That was why she opened her mouth and wanted to exchange it for one of the Yang realm's ultimate techniques. The old servant was tongue-tied. Ying Zhixian opened her mouth. Her voice was pleasant to the ears as she said, "May I ask, Senior, if you can use other things to exchange for it? As for the others, I'm afraid you guys will be even more reluctant. Let's use the quasi-immortal tribe's sect-guarding breathing technique then," the middle-aged woman said expressionlessly. When everyone heard this, they all had strange expressions. There was no way they could continue their business. At this moment, a white-clothed and otherworldly young man with hair that was less than an inch on his head appeared. He was ethereal and otherworldly, and he was truly elegant and otherworldly like jade. He wore a special monastic robe. It was snow-white and glossy, and there were some interweaving golden threads on it. It was not the usual red monastic robe. "Senior, I'm also very interested. I wonder if there's any room for negotiation?" Without a doubt, he was from the Buddha race. The thunderous breathing technique can be exchanged for this furnace. The middle-aged woman spoke indifferently. She was dressed in gray and appeared very ordinary, but no one dared to probe her cultivation. Thinking about it, selling the time furnace so brazenly like this was definitely not an ordinary person. The group of people was silent. This woman even dared to ask for the thunderous breathing technique. The Buddha race was one of the strongest races in the Yang realm. This breathing technique had never fallen out of the top 5, regardless of whether it was in history or now. It could be said that this race's breathing technique was extremely powerful and could be called the ultimate. Since ancient times, some of the top-ranked breathing techniques had been replaced and could no longer squeeze into the top 10. However, the Buddha race's breathing technique had always been at the top and could suppress the entire Yang realm. With this breathing technique, one could evolve all kinds of wondrous techniques and didn't need to cultivate other secret manuals. According to legend, one of the strongest secret techniques in the Yang realm, the trump card of the Buddha race, salvation of the world, was comprehended after cultivating the thunderous breathing technique to the extreme. "I can't make the decision." The white-clothed, short-haired man shook his head. These were polite words, but they were actually a refusal. It was impossible to exchange the thunderous breathing technique. The thunderous breathing technique could suppress the Yang realm. What kind of joke was this? No matter how precious the time furnace was, it couldn't be compared to the Buddha race's supreme scripture. How could it be exchanged? For a moment, this place was silent. Everyone understood that this middle-aged woman looked quiet and didn't speak much, but her appetite was actually very big. How could ordinary objects be able to move her? What was rare was that no one actually looted and no one actually made a move here. Even the few people in the eyes of primal chaos in front of the waterfall who had acted strangely earlier were now quiet and didn't come out. Obviously, they were also stunned by the middle-aged woman's conditions. From this, it could be seen that the middle-aged woman's background wasn't simple. She made people revere her, and no one dared to cause trouble. Everyone, perhaps you think that my conditions are too harsh. In that case, let me divulge some information. Do you know who the first owner of this item is? The middle-aged woman looked at everyone. Who? A divine king asked in a simple and direct manner. The prehistoric dark hand, Li Su. When this kind of words came out, the place was quiet at first, but then it boiled over. After hearing this, Chu Feng was first dumbfounded, and then he didn't know why, but he actually wanted to laugh. Old Gu sworn brother, this was really notorious. He had become the publicly recognized Dark Hand, but judging from everyone's reaction, his fame was too shocking. For a moment, even the white-robed Buddha from the Buddhist race was moved. The people of the quasi-saint race also revealed strange expressions. They were all moved once again. Not to mention the others, their hearts were surging and their blood was flowing faster. The madman who dared to attack the martial madman and beat him until his head bled was still one of the strongest legends in the history of evolution. Chu Feng secretly asked old Gu, "Is this really his big brother's item?" Bulsh asterisk T. I've never seen this broken furnace before. Old Gu insisted that he had never seen this thing before. The middle-aged woman said, before Li Su died, or perhaps before he disappeared, he obtained this item and personally fished it out from the waterfall. He studied it for 2 to 3 years and treasured it, not letting anyone see it. In the end, he died with the eternal mystery, but this item was left behind. When these words were spoken, it caused an even greater commotion. Some youngsters and even divine kings ordered the people around them to leave. This was to report to their clans and ask their elders if they wanted to bid for it. Li Su once said that this item is strange and contains a great secret, the middle-aged woman added. Things had already reached this point, and the storm it caused was unimaginable. Even people from the primal chaos, I walked out of the vortex and looked down from the sky. Chu Feng secretly said, "Old Gu, this is unbearable. She's using your big brother's fame to peddle fake goods. Don't you want to expose her? Or tell me some secrets, and I'll report her for you in the future. You want to get benefits from me?" Old Gu looked as if he had seen through Chu Feng. Soon after, his reaction was very strange as he muttered solemnly, "Could it be that thing? What thing? Don't tell me there really is such an item." Chu Feng was astonished. There really is such an item. 2 or 3 years before my big brother died, he indeed fished out an item from heaven-piercing waterfall. He was extremely cautious and didn't let me see it. He said that he already had a premonition that it was an extremely terrifying item. Celestial sovereign realm experts might die if they wore it. It was extremely inauspicious. Old Gu recalled the events of the past and was endlessly bewildered. Could it be that it was this time furnace? Chu Feng was astonished. There really was such an ancient artifact. This was too astonishing. And if it's that thing, I advise you to hide as far away as possible. You can't bear that kind of fortune. Back then, my big brother said that only he and a few others could study it for a long time. If others dared to do so, they would undoubtedly die. This thing represents inauspiciousness and extreme terror. Old Gu completely recalled the events of the past and was incomparably solemn. He actually said these words. At this time, a young lady identical to Linoy also came. She smiled and nodded towards Ing Zhixian, the white-clothed Buddha child, and the others. She received the time furnace and personally went to look. However, her reaction was very strange. It was as if she had encountered a snake or scorpion. She had just placed it in her hands, yet she threw it away in an instant. Her complexion was slightly pale. Chu Feng keenly noticed that a special aura soared from her body. There was an energy trace that belonged to the ultimate zone of reincarnation. Only someone like him who succeeded in crossing reincarnation with his corporeal body could sense it. Chu Feng was astonished. How could this young lady identical to Linoy have this kind of reaction? Just now, she clearly used her awakened reincarnation methods and memories. One had to bear in mind that Chu Feng had seen the imprint she left behind in the Palace of Reincarnation. That was a peerless and terrifying figure. Endless years ago, in an era even longer than the prehistoric era, she had reincarnated. This possibly meant that she had just recognized what kind of item the time furnace was. Could it be that she had come into contact with it in the prehistoric era? This little fairy, are you a bit afraid of it, or are you saying that you have some understanding of it? The middle-aged woman revealed a strange expression as she inquired. Chapter 1124. There was a record of it? Everyone was very surprised, and at the same time, their spirits were shaken. Were they going to figure out the origins of this object? Not to mention the others, even the evolvers in the eyes of primal chaos had come out. There was no need to elaborate on the people present. Who wouldn't want this furnace? That should be a unique manuscript made of special materials that are tough and difficult to damage. But under the wetting of time, more than half of it is still incomplete. There are a few pages with pictures and descriptions of the dimensions. It mentions this time furnace, and after a careful look, I believe it is the object in front of us. The words of a girl who looked like Linoy stirred the crowd. They were eager to know the origins of this furnace. Even the middle-aged woman selling the furnace was moved. She was no longer as calm as before, instead seriously asking about the details. It was because their organization had deeply experienced the fist-sized little furnace's terror. From ancient times until now, they had truly suffered greatly, their losses horrifying. The owner of the manuscript understood Li Su and had come into contact with him. Even if his strength wasn't as great as the prehistoric Dark Hand, he wasn't much weaker. He once mentioned that Li Su's death or disappearance was likely related to this furnace. After these words were spoken, the entire area fell silent. Everyone was dumbfounded and held their breaths, no longer making a sound. Li Su's death was an unsolvable mystery, a case without a clue. Even now, no one knew how he had disappeared. His glorious and insufferably arrogant era of rule had abruptly ended. Some people said that he had wanted to attack the true Great Een realm in a towering rage for a beautiful woman, but he had encountered a terrifying Dark Hand and died. Some people said that he had opened up the path to the Great Een realm, but an accident had occurred. He had rushed through on his own and hadn't been able to bring his troops in time. Others said that apart from the evolvers at the top of the known pyramid in the Yang realm, there was also the Misty region. An unknown entity had acted decisively and destroyed Li Su. Some people even said that the reincarnation hunter had joined forces with the celestial venerables and the almighty predators to kill Li Su. The most terrifying entity had attacked together and killed Li Su. There were many legends, but none of them mentioned that Li Su's death was related to a small furnace. The time furnace was a rare and priceless treasure, but no one believed that this fist-sized furnace could bury the world-shaking Li Su. Today was the first time people had heard of such a rumor. Old Gu, is it reliable? Was your big brother killed by this small furnace? Chu Feng secretly asked Gu Chenhai. Old Gu was furious and said, "Bullshit. My big brother can't be buried by the heavens and extinguished by the earth. How could he die so cowardly under a small furnace?" Moreover, he had long seen through the strangeness of the time furnace and was already on guard. The girl who looked like Linoy continued to talk about some details. For example, Li Su had studied the time cauldron in the past. He had not come out for several days and immersed the cauldron with the power of creation. This shocked Chu Feng and also shocked Gu Chenhai. There were some details that even Gu Chenhai didn't know. How could the letter record them? Gu Chenhai was surprised and bewildered. He guessed that it was one of Li Su's concubines or a heavenly fairy from a great sect that he had captured and turned into a maid that had leaked the secret. Otherwise, how could the outside world know of it? Apart from Li Su, there were two other masters of the time furnace. It was clearly recorded that they died in this furnace, the girl said, revealing the last part of the record. How Li Su had disappeared was still a mystery, but the other two had indeed died under the time furnace. This was recorded in the blood-colored characters in the loan letter. This was horrifying. They were at least almighty existences, but they had died inexplicably. Moreover, the murderer was pointing to this furnace? Yes, that's right. This is a great vicious object. It contains mysteries. The middle-aged seller nodded and didn't deny it. Clearly, she knew many things and understood more. Senior seems to have controlled this heavenly object for many years. Are you unharmed? The girl who looked like Linoy asked. The middle-aged woman was calm and indifferent. It doesn't belong to me, but is collected by our organization. There have indeed been some tragedies in these years. When everyone heard this, they immediately spoke up one after another, asking her to explain all the abnormalities of the time furnace. Someone said, "We are interested in buying it, so we should understand the details." The others nodded one after another, echoing, "Yes, we are interested in this object. Senior should be honest and not deceive us. She and I are of the same origin, and we come from the same organization. We have never cheated anyone, and from prehistoric times until now, we have never had a bad reputation." The middle-aged woman spoke, pointing towards the old woman who was selling Grandma Meng's soup on the stone bridge. When everyone heard this, there wasn't a single person who wasn't moved. Many people's expressions changed. No wonder even the Empyrean-level existences didn't dare rob them from the eyes of primal chaos. It turned out that they had this kind of foundation behind them. Some young men and women didn't know, but some robust adults and older generation figures were horrified. This organization was extremely terrifying. Eras changed, and fierce individuals who had dominated for a period of time passed away. However, this organization still existed, still carrying out the business of the past. This was incomparably terrifying. For example, every once in a while, they would come to sell Grandma Meng's soup when opportunities appeared at the Heavenly Waterfall. This kind of precious liquid was treated as a strategic resource by the Hung clan, Li clan, and the other most powerful clans. Once they obtained it, they definitely wouldn't sell it, but they dared to do this. One of our organization's leaders back then researched this furnace for close to 100 years. He didn't leave it day and night, baptizing it with soul light all year round. In the end, he died inexplicably, passing away without a sound. Following the middle-aged woman's words, this place was stirred up. At the same time, everyone felt horrified. This was truly an inauspicious object. How powerful was this organization? It was comparable to the most powerful orthodoxies in the Yang realm. Even one of their leaders from the past died because of this. This was a huge matter. In just 100 years, the leader comprehended many divine techniques and incomplete heavenly techniques. There were even some breathing techniques. If they could be completed, they would all be forbidden ultimate arts. This immediately made many people reveal strange expressions. Even though they felt that it was inappropriate, they didn't feel that it was too terrifying. There was actually a mysterious inheritance within this time furnace. Later on, from ancient times until now, there were 6 generations of our organization's leaders or supreme elders. All of them died inexplicably because they researched this furnace. The middle-aged woman spoke frankly. From then on, this small furnace was sealed in the warehouse for a relatively long period of time. No one touched it again because it represented extreme inauspiciousness. All of this was just as Li Su had said to Gu Chenhai in private. He warned him not to touch it because there weren't many blessings in this world. If he touched it, he would definitely die after a long period of time. Outsiders didn't know what Li Su said, but what the middle-aged woman said made the evolvers present feel terrified. For a moment, all of them retreated and didn't dare to personally examine this furnace again. The middle-aged woman said, "Our organization has always been candid in doing business. We've never cheated the old or the young. If there's anything, just say it. That's why we've told everyone everything." "Senior, you try and scare us away. Who would dare to buy it after hearing your introduction?" The middle-aged woman was very calm as she said, "Then let me add one more point. The 10th wondrous technique in the world. Hell's Return was created after our organization's successive leaders observed the time furnace and were deeply inspired." Bang! This area immediately became clamorous and completely chaotic. "What? Some people cried out in alarm. How could they not cry out alarm? This was really too astonishing. This was explosive news. The top 10 wondrous techniques of a young realm had almost all been lost. Every one of them was a strategic trump card for a clan. Some wondrous techniques required all members of a clan to act together in order to be displayed. The power was boundless and could suppress the world. Now, there were too few complete techniques that had been passed down. More or less, their foundations had been broken. Chapter 1125. The Return of the Underworld. This wonderful technique was too astonishing in the history of evolution. It was so powerful that it was enough to sweep through the world and intimidate all races. No one dared disobey it. It was actually comprehended from the time furnace by the leaders of that organization. Finally, it was a complete and systematic creation. This was fairly astonishing. Moreover, our dead leaders said that they only explored the deeper regions of the time furnace. As for the end, they could only vaguely see it and couldn't set foot on it. Elder, there's a big situation at the Heavenly Waterfall. Ancestor Xian, I have an important secret report to the clan. For a moment, the evolvers at the scene couldn't stay any longer. They either walked into the distance or left the area. They used various communication tools to contact their respective sects and clans. So much so that some domain researchers activated the Divine Magnetic Platform and returned directly to their clans to explain and report in person. This place was bustling with activity. Many creatures surrounded them, including humans, divine birds, and vicious beasts. They were all looking at the time furnace. Additionally, the leaders of the various top-notch evolutionary sects were on their way in preparation to rush over here. In front of the Heavenly Waterfall, many people were in awe and fear of this furnace. The middle-aged woman said, "It's actually nothing. As long as one doesn't wear it for a long time, nothing will happen. There's no karmic entanglement." The group of people was skeptical. They had to fight for this thing, but they would definitely leave it to the old fellows in their clans to research. Some of the younger ones didn't dare touch it. Many people looked at the girl who looked like Linoi. Even Ing Zhixian nodded in greeting and asked her if it would be inauspicious to touch it for a short period of time. The girl said, "There's no detailed record in the letter. It only mentioned that one should avoid it as much as possible and not stay with it for a long time. Otherwise, it'll be difficult for one to survive in this world." Everyone nodded and felt slightly relieved. The terrifying creatures that walked out of the primal chaos emitted a white mist that enveloped the primal chaos. They had personally picked up the furnace and examined it seriously. Later on, the others couldn't help but step forward after those creatures left to feel and experience it. The time furnace was divided into regions. Everyone probed, but didn't sense anything. They guessed that this was most likely related to their level of strength and that they weren't qualified. They also didn't know whether those creatures that walked out of the primal chaos had an indescribable experience or sensed something. In the end, Chu Feng couldn't hold back. He really didn't believe it and wanted to go over to take a look. Gu Chenhai warned sternly, "Brat, don't look for trouble yourself. Haven't you heard? Curiosity killed a dragon." Chu Feng said, "It's not like I want to take it for myself. Even if I wanted to, I'm not qualified to compete with an ultimate orthodoxy. I'm just going there to take a look. Didn't I say that it won't affect me in the short term?" If that wasn't the case, he wouldn't have gone over. Chu Feng waited in line. When it was his turn, he picked up the furnace. It was really heavy, as expected of the mother gold. He weighed it in his hand and felt that it was very heavy. He looked at the old-fashioned furnace. It left his body, not coming into contact with it. There was actually a layer of light around it. That was the power of time, making one feel as if time was sometimes frozen, sometimes chaotic. Chu Feng's expression changed immediately. This furnace was very powerful. If it was used well, it could temporarily freeze the nearby space-time. If it was used against an enemy, it would be a terrifying attack. He explored for a moment, but unfortunately, he didn't discover any special hidden domain in this furnace. This also meant that he couldn't comprehend the scriptures and techniques. Finally, he returned it turned around, and walked to the side. It's a little strange. Chu Feng's heart sank. It wasn't that his intuition was heaven-defying or that he had some special reaction. It was because the stone jar in his bosom had moved slightly when he was inspecting the time furnace. It was very weak and almost indiscernible. He walked far away and used his hand to caress the stone jar. He used his spirit to explore it. Suddenly, his heart skipped a beat. When his finger reached into the stone jar and touched the reincarnation soil, he was instantly horrified. That was because he felt his scalp tighten. As for his fingers, they hurt as if they were being grabbed by something. This made him tremble. He felt a bone-piercing chill and cold air curled up behind him. Chu Feng probed with his spirit and looked at the scene inside the stone jar. His scalp immediately went numb. What did he see? There were actually black fingerprints on a few of his fingers. It was as if something had grabbed his hand fiercely and left behind such terrifying marks. However, no one had ever held his hand or grabbed his fingers before this. He didn't even have any contact with other people or objects. Old Goo. It could be ruled out. They had been together for such a long time and nothing had happened. Thinking about it carefully, it could only be the time furnace. Because these fingers had held it and touched it, could it be that this had happened? This was terrifying. Chu Feng felt a chill run down his spine. What had happened in the end? What terrifying and strange thing had appeared and grabbed him in the process of taking the time furnace? Why didn't he feel anything at that time? Chu Feng was a bit scared. He had just come into contact with that strange furnace, and such a thing had happened. One could imagine how terrifying it would be to wear it for a long time. He withdrew his hand from the stone jar. In the end, he discovered that it was still as lustrous as jade. It was slender and flawless. It was very beautiful, and there was nothing strange about it. Only in the stone jar could it be reflected. As expected, he put his hand in again, and the black fingerprints appeared again. Moreover, after he touched the reincarnation soil in the stone jar, he discovered a certain terrifying scene and heard some faint sounds. On his finger, there was an inexplicable substance dispersing from the black fingerprints. It was somewhat demonic and faint, but he could clearly capture it. Chu Feng discovered that the place where his finger touched the time furnace was evaporating the inexplicable substance. He couldn't see anything outside the stone jar, but he could have such an experience inside. It was too strange and made him shudder. Upon careful observation, it was a layer of pure white mist. It looked holy and ethereal, but it was also frightening. It was constantly evaporating from the black mark at the tip of his finger. Then, the substance that was evaporating inexplicably dispersed in the stone jar. Especially after coming into contact with the reincarnation soil, it was completely obliterated. What was this? He was astonished. At the same time, he felt that there was a great way. He immediately thought of some things. Gu Chenhai's big brother, Li Su, had once searched the world for soul flesh and used underhanded means. Could it be because of the time furnace? That couldn't be right. Li Su had started to search for soul flesh a long time ago. At that time, he shouldn't have fished out the time furnace from the sky-high waterfall. Suddenly, a blurry scene appeared in the stone jar. It originated from the substance evaporating from Chu Feng's finger. At the same time, the originally faint sound became stronger. He could gradually hear it. It was a cold, rigid, merciless, and mechanical sound. It was like some ancient ritual was being carried out. Chapter 11:26. Chu Feng remained motionless as he carefully listened. This was a bit frightening. He had only been looking at the time furnace, but he had actually heard such a sound. In particular, the deep black finger marks on his hand were too strange. They made his hair stand on end, as if he had been clawed by a malicious spirit. But he hadn't felt anything before. He hadn't sensed anything at all and could only appear in the stone jar. This made him feel uneasy. Of course, what he was most concerned about was this sound. What was it trying to express? The heavens cannot bury them in the four extremes of the floating earth. Cut down the yin and yang firewood, draw in the flames of the great void, receive the flames of the ancient universe, burn. These words continued several times. Moreover, a blurry and hazy figure appeared. It was a living being that couldn't be seen clearly, but one could see that it was covered in some kind of earth and that there were flames rising from it. The more it burned, the more resplendent it became, and the more divine it became. It seemed to shine with an eternal brilliance. Chu Feng remained motionless as he watched, but that so-called resplendence only flashed by. He wanted to capture the living being at the center, but he couldn't. It was too dazzling. His spiritual force wasn't strong enough to approach. Even the fiery eyes weren't enough. He couldn't look straight at it and couldn't discover the finer details. His pupils were in intense pain. There was no sound. He couldn't see the flames and the living being either. They had all disappeared, and the stone jar returned to its tranquil state. Chu Feng woke up and looked at his right hand. The black finger marks had all disappeared as if they had been cleanly purified and erased. Strange and terrifying. What the hell is going on? Chu Feng began to ponder in his mind. In particular, those words had left an indelible impression on him. This seemed to be very important. The four extremes of the floating earth. Is it a special type of earth? Or is it one of the four extremes of unfathomable earth? Or is it produced from the four extremes? Chu Feng had too many questions in his heart. Yin and Yang firewood. Are they real? Or are they illusory? Are they actually referring to Yin and Yang? He pondered each sentence, considering the meaning of these words. There seemed to be an inexplicable power within. Was it to create a person or destroy a person? It was clear that whether it was the flames of the great void or the ancient cosmic flames, they were the main types of energy used to burn. These two types of flames were likely extremely rare and precious. At the very least, Chu Feng had never heard of such a thing before. Chu Feng lifted his right hand that had erased the black mark from the stone jar. Afterwards, he glanced at his left hand. It was spotlessly white and slender. Then, he reached into the stone jar of reincarnation soil. Sure enough, black fingerprints also appeared on this hand. This hand had also touched the time furnace. However, the fingerprints on his left hand were slightly fainter and not as frighteningly black. Chu Feng was surprised. Was there a difference? The two hands had touched the small furnace for about the same amount of time, so it shouldn't be like this. He pondered for a moment. Could it be that the black fingerprints on his left hand were slowly disappearing by themselves when he had left it outside? It didn't necessarily need the samsara earth to erase them? Yes, that should be the case. Chu Feng nodded and guessed. According to the legends, for those that came into contact with the time furnace throughout the ages, as long as it was for a short period of time and didn't exceed a certain period of time, no ominous events would occur and they wouldn't be harmed. At this time, the indifferent, mechanical, inflexible, and emotionless voice sounded out from the stone jar once more, repeating the words spoken not too long ago. At the same time, Chu Feng also saw a living being buried in the floating earth and then burning. Then, a divine light shined down, as if it wanted to tear apart the eternal night and transcend beyond, truly lofty and lofty. Soon, the black fingerprints on Chu Feng's left hand faded away before being completely erased. That strange voice and scenery also vanished. Old Gu, have you heard of the four extremes floating earth? Chu Feng asked. What is that? Gu Chenhai was flabbergasted. What the hell was this? He had never heard of it before. This also meant that he hadn't heard the voice from the stone jar just now. Even at such a close distance, he hadn't sensed anything at all, so he didn't know what sort of terrifying event had occurred. Yin and Yang, the two firewoods. You should have heard of them, right? Chu Feng asked again. Moreover, it was as if it was a matter of course that he should have heard of them. Old Gu's face flushed red because he really hadn't heard of such a saying. He feigned disdain and said, firewood. What Yin and Yang are you talking about? You're just pretending to be fastidious and pretentious. Chu Feng asked again, flames of the grand sky, flames of ancient Yin. Can this kind of fire be ranked first and second in the universe? Can it be called supreme in the Yang realm? Little thief, you dare to spout nonsense after making up a few terms? Do you really think I'm an idiot? Go play with the mud on the side. Don't try to fool this old man. Old Gu put on an air of contempt, as if he had seen through Chu Feng. In truth, he flew into a rage out of humiliation. He didn't know a single one of these messy names and had never heard of them before. Chu Feng shivered and was greatly shaken in his heart. Even an old demon like Old Gu, who had survived from prehistory, didn't know about these terms and had never heard of them before. It seemed that they weren't simple at all. It would probably be abnormally difficult to find them. He faintly felt that the implications of this were far too great. For a time, all sorts of thoughts raced through his mind. Was the so-called four extremes floating the earth of the soul and flesh? After all, Li Su had once searched the entire world for it. Of course, what Chu Feng believed to be the most serious matter was also the most terrifying matter. This was the general meaning of these words. Was this a method of calcining one's self and refining a body that couldn't be buried by the heavens? Or was it the complete opposite meaning? If this was a mnemonic chant, an ultimate body refining method, then it would absolutely be priceless. If one could cultivate a body that couldn't be buried by the heavens, then in this world, including reincarnation, who could destroy it? For what I can see, that life form seems to be lying there on its own initiative and then being incinerated. Chu Feng pondered. Could this really be an ultimate law, a transcendent body refining scripture? As long as one could find those items, they would be able to form an invincible body through all ages? Chu Feng pondered, feeling that this really did seem like a secret passage. What was even more interesting was that it was in line with the Great Tao's simplicity. It was just this passage, but if one thinks about it from another direction, then this passage is a bit scary. Chu Feng pondered inwardly. The heavens can't be buried, drowned in the four extremes floating earth, cut the yin and yang to firewood. This passage could be understood as how to cultivate that kind of unparalleled body. However, it could also be understood as a step-by-step process. It was to destroy the heavens, can't be buried by the heavens. Using the materials behind to destroy the heavens, can't be buried by the heavens. If one understood it this way, then this wasn't a body cultivation method, but rather body incineration. It was burning a type of ultimate corpse. Chu Feng couldn't help but wipe his forehead. There really was a bit of cold sweat. If one thought about it this way, then that furnace of time was actually a corpse incineration furnace. When he thought of this possibility, his entire body felt uncomfortable. Just how inauspicious was this thing? So many people still want to fight over it, and he had even touched it before, holding it in his hands and stroking it. Chu Feng couldn't help but break out into a cold shiver. He always felt that touching something that seemed to be a corpse incineration furnace like that was extremely disgusting. At this time, he rubbed his hands with all his might, wishing he could rub off a layer of skin. It really might be a corpse incineration furnace. The more Chu Feng thought about it, the more he felt that there was a great possibility. At the very least, this furnace itself was inauspicious. Throughout history, all those who possessed it, those who wore it for a long period of time, all of them died. Moreover, not long ago, he personally experienced the terrifying black fingerprints that appeared on his hands. It really was like seeing a living ghost. Apart from this, that emotionless, cold, mechanical, and old-fashioned voice also seemed to be carrying out some kind of ceremony. Was this the so-called burial ground of great figures? He really felt uncomfortable inside, his body feeling as if a group of ants was crawling over it. Chu Feng was extremely disgusted, flinging his hands with all his might, really wishing he could jump into a great river to wash away his body. In the end, Chu Feng sighed and said, "Actually, if we look into it deeply, this is still a body-tempering technique in the end. If it was a mnemonic chant or a kind of secret inheritance, then there was no need to mention it. If it was a corpse incineration furnace, then it was some kind of ritual to destroy the corpse of a powerhouse, and the conditions needed to be met. This also meant that this was a relatively shocking method. If there really was someone who could use this process to temper their body and forcefully resist it, then they would definitely be able to transcend and become completely high and mighty. Of course, if it was the latter case, then it would definitely have to be done step by step. It was impossible to burn oneself fiercely right from the start, but rather simmer over a small fire and gradually adapt. Tempering the great body is like cooking a small fish. Bah! When he said the last sentence, even he himself felt disgusted. Thinking about it this way, that sentence was very important. If this road could really be walked, then it was really possible to achieve an undefeated body through the ages. Chu Feng came back again, wanting to consider it again. There were many people near the time furnace, and they were divided into groups according to their age and the closeness of each race. For example, there were many people at the place where the young girl who looked like Linoy was. All of them were young talents who came from some extremely powerful evolutionary races and were all well known. It could be seen that even the young girl who looked like Linoy was very polite to them. From this, one could tell that some of these people had very high statuses and great origins. At the very least, Chu Feng could see that there were men in the form of divine birds and women in the form of vicious beasts among them. All of them were extraordinary. There's actually an evolver with a golden crow. Is he pure-blooded? And there's also a woman in the form of a white tiger. It's a little shocking. Chu Feng was astonished. That golden crow youth seemed to be a top young character in his race. Many people surrounded him, and his whole body was shining with golden light. He was wearing a golden feather robe and had a heroic bearing. On the other side, Ingwudi had arrived. This time, Chu Feng finally discovered that his face wasn't black and was fair and clean. Chu Feng felt a bit of toothache. When he was with the Ing sisters in the past, Ingwudi's face would easily turn black at every turn. This symptom was actually gone now. However, he quickly discovered that he was thinking too much. After a group of people surrounded Ing Zhixian, stunned by her beauty, and tried to worm their way into being friends with her, Ingwudi's face decisively turned black again. This group of people really wasn't to be trifled with. Even the quasi-immortal race might not be able to suppress them all. Some of the youths had extremely astonishing origins. For example, there was a red-haired youth in his 20s who was the focus of many people. He was actually a human from the alien wasteland. According to legend, this race possessed extraordinary innate gifts. When their primogenitor broke away from the human race and established a race of his own, he achieved great merits and passed on the innate purplish-red heavenly blood to all his descendants. There were also some groups nearby, and all of them were powerful young experts. They had their own small circles and were chatting happily. There was no doubt that some of them were the center of attention and were being complimented. They were indeed dazzling, powerful, and had deep backgrounds. For example, the white-clothed Buddha from the Buddhist race had a halo behind his head and was extraordinary and refined. Other than that, there were some clans that had been passed down from prehistoric times to the present and had always been prosperous. They had actually appeared as their descendants rushed over. The men were handsome, and the women were extremely beautiful. All of them became the focus of attention. Chu Feng didn't go over and instead queued up again. Even though it was very disgusting, he still wanted to weigh the time furnace again and investigate in detail. He wanted to try and see if he could hear another voice if he held it for a while longer. He really wanted to refine an undefeated body through the ages. Even though he knew this was an extravagant wish, how could he reject everything if he didn't try? In any case, he had the reincarnation Earth and wasn't afraid of being entangled by the inauspicious. Upon closer inspection, there weren't many people near the time furnace. They were all old fellows, and the other youths had all avoided them. "There's really someone who isn't afraid of death?" someone said with a chuckle. He gestured to this side and said, "There's an idiot who went over again." For a moment, everyone's gazes converged over. At this time, the girl who looked like Linoy said, "This time furnace is inauspicious. After coming into contact with it, you should meditate as soon as possible and circulate your breathing technique to expel all the energy in your body and gather it again. Moreover, it's best not to come into contact with it a second time." She had just said this to some people in private just now, and the people nearby more or less knew about it. At this time, she reminded Chu Feng, Chapter 11:27. Are you calling me? Even though the youth on the other side had a smile on his face, there was a bit of sharpness in his words, even more so a type of pressure. His silver-white battle clothes flowed with brilliant colors, extremely valiant. His age wasn't great, black hair and black eyes, full of vigor, looking 13 or 14 years old. Right now, the blood within his body surged, unexpectedly surging like a great sea, carrying thunderous sounds. In that instant, an astonishing aura surged from his body. Even though he was young, he already gave his peers a terrifying feeling of pressure, golden light flickering about his body. Top-grade golden body. A few people sighed in admiration, all of them able to see that this youth was formidable, cultivating the golden body domain's extraordinary golden body. Normal clan's youngsters couldn't cultivate this at all. His golden body carried purple light, also known as the purple golden body. Evolving this type of golden body was known as the path to becoming an Empyrean. This was the foundation for becoming an Empyrean or even greater being. With this golden body, one's future path would be extremely smooth. Only 13 or 14 years old, yet he already cultivated the purple golden body. The younger generation will surpass us in time. This is Shi family's child, named Shi Huang, an outstanding talent of this generation's nurturing. Someone said softly, recognizing his identity. Shi Huang had a faint smile on his face as he walked over. However, there's a bit of coldness in the depths of his eyes. There aren't many who dare speak to me like this. Then I will definitely be one of them. Chu Feng was also smiling, not treating this as a big deal. Everyone in the younger generation looked over, staring at these two. A few people knew Shi Huang's identity. This clan was deep and immeasurable, passed down from the prehistoric era, never extinguished, and could be considered to have flourished for a long time. This was especially the case in recent years when an old ancestor of Shi family came out from seclusion, triggering a huge commotion. That old ancestor was someone from the prehistoric era, yet he actually didn't die. Just how powerful was he now? The level of his evolution was immeasurable. When the outside world learned of this, especially Shi family's enemies, they all became silent, not daring to compete with them anymore, thus withdrawing. Now, Shi family was like the midday sun, playing an important role in the Yang realm. It was a powerful family with roots and history. I've underestimated you. You have some guts, a loose cultivator actually daring to speak to me like this. Not bad. Shi Huang nodded. His silver-white battle clothes shone, his body tall and sturdy, heroic and vigorous. Chu Feng was stunned. He could even tell that he was a rogue cultivator. He pondered for a moment and immediately understood. Just now, everyone was contacting their respective clans and sects to inform them about the time furnace. Only he was in a daze at the side and didn't do so. Chu Feng was surprised. This Shi Huang was truly meticulous. There were so many people in front of the heavenly path of Mortal Waterfall, yet he could still notice the actions of a rogue cultivator. I'm here. What can you do to me? Shi Huang approached, his steps majestic and imposing. There were a few people following behind him. If they weren't the young masters of clans, then they were the core inheritors of sections. They surrounded him, all of their statuses extraordinary, yet they surrounded him like the moon. In comparison, Chu Feng's side was too shabby. He was alone and weak, with only a donkey spirit who had transformed into a youth following him. He listened to Chu Feng's warning and kept silent, not saying a word. Not far away, Zhong Xiao, Ing Zhixian, the white-robed Buddha, Emperor Peng, and the others all looked over. That's enough. You could go back the way you came. Chu Feng waved his hand with an impatient look on his face. What did you say? Shi Huang revealed a cold expression. Was he making fun of him? Who dared to order him around? He was purely making fun of him. Rumble. Shi Huang erupted, and his purple golden body became increasingly resplendent. He revealed a faint killing intent and said, "A rogue cultivator dares to speak nonsense to me." He approached Chu Feng with an arrogant expression. He wanted to suppress him if he didn't agree with him. Enough. Hurry up and stay at the side. I don't have time to play with you. Chu Feng was impatient. It was his turn soon. The time furnace was placed on the stone table in front of him. How can you say that? You're so insolent that you're stupid. Before Shi Huang could speak, some of the evolvers who followed him couldn't bear it anymore. Shut up, Chu Feng said. Then, he moved as fast as lightning. He directly grabbed the time furnace and decisively slapped it into Shi Huang's hand. The other party had already closed in and was looking down on him. Oh my God! The people who followed him were all shocked and immediately retreated. They were extremely afraid of this furnace and didn't want to touch it again. Damn you! Shi Huang was disgusted and his hair stood on end. It would have been fine if he didn't know what this thing was like. But now he completely understood. Moreover, there was someone specifically reminding him not to touch it a second time. He almost threw the time furnace, but he couldn't have stage fright in front of so many people. However, Chu Feng instantly took the time furnace from his hand and held it in his own hand again. Shi Huang felt relieved and cooperatively returned it to him. The first time it was stuffed into his hand, he was careless and the other party took advantage of a loophole. This time, it was under his control and he just happened to have a way out of the situation. He didn't want to hold this ominous furnace. However, Chu Feng's words made him a little angry. Okay, let's go back the way we came. Although these words didn't contain any anger, when he connected them together, he was teasing Shi Huang. He called him over and then waved his hand to send him away. How could this be? Shi Huang was furious. His purple gold body erupted, and the blood in his body flowed like thunder. His entire body shone brightly. Even some of the young adults were surprised. They secretly thought about how they were at this age and felt that they couldn't compare to Shi Huang. Those who could come here all had extraordinary identities, and many of these people believed that they could not compare to the Shi clan's disciple who had the purple golden body when they were young, so one could imagine his talent and strength. Chu Feng only had one action, and that was to bring out the time furnace and attack Shi Huang. Shi Huang acted like he was avoiding a snake or a scorpion. He immediately flew away from that place. Chu Feng didn't say anything and continued to watch the time furnace. For a moment, everyone laughed. Many people realized that this rogue cultivator had played a trick on Shi Huang. He called him over and then asked him to leave, letting his opponent do as he said. Kill him, Shi Huang yelled. Behind him, two people suddenly stood up. They were the god-level evolvers of the clan who had escorted him to this place. The two immediately strode over. With a clang, one of them directly pulled out a divine sword. The snow-white light illuminated the place, and the energy of gods filled the air. Many people's expressions changed. In this place, rogue cultivators were really like clay chickens and pottery dogs. Under the law of the jungle, they couldn't compete with the children of aristocratic families at all, and they didn't have a protector. You're angry out of humiliation and directly sent a god to kill me. Chu Feng's eyes were cold. In the Yang realm, the suppression of the order of heaven and earth was very strong. In some large provinces, even gods couldn't leave the ground and couldn't fly in the sky or escape the earth. Therefore, it was difficult for those two people to show the terrifying aura of gods that could suppress the galaxy in the Lesser Een realm. Otherwise, if the gods were to move in the Lesser Een realm, Chu Feng would be suppressed by that aura and be unable to move if he didn't use the Tao fruit of his previous life. He would explode instantly. Now, he could still open his mouth and speak coldly. Young man, you're very naive. You've come to the wrong place. How dare you speak nonsense here? You don't even know how the word death is written. A mere rogue cultivator dares to be disrespectful to the core children of the prehistoric aristocratic families and speak impudently. Let me tell you how to be respectful. The two gods both raised their sharp swords. One wanted to kill him, and the other wanted to cut him in half at the waist and torture him first. Two lightning-like sword lights slashed over with a terrifying murderous aura. Strictly speaking, it was too wasteful to kill a youth at the golden body level like this. It was like using a dragon-slaying saber to kill a lamb. Everything was because the Sure family youth had lost face. The clan expressed its stance and warned the evolvers present that the Sure family couldn't be offended. Some people sighed in pity. This rogue cultivator youth really died a little unjustly. Of course, there were also many people, such as the group of young experts following Shi Huang, who revealed cold smiles. Is there still justice in this world? As Chu Feng spoke, he swung his sleeves and fiercely slapped out. A brick. What is justice? My Sure family is justice. The two gods sneered one after another. Look at my sky, flipping seal. Chu Feng shouted, not hiding anything at all. Clang, clang. Sparks flew in all directions. The two divine swords were both smashed into pieces, and all the murderous aura was dispersed. After the two swords fell to the ground, they turned into scrap metal and shattered on the ground, their luster dim. Those who dare to become enemies with my Sure family deserve to die. Not far away, there were still people whispering behind Shi Huang, but they suddenly stopped. You dare! The two gods were even more shocked. They realized that they had touched an iron plate. Using the body of a god to deal with a youth, they actually had to face a calamity? Why wouldn't this young master dare? Look at my ancient sky, flipping seal. Chu Feng swung the brick again and directly threw it out. Old Gu cursed in his heart. This was using his shrunken coffin as a weapon. Although they had an agreement, he was still unhappy. However, he didn't slack off and cooperated very well. With two puffs, the sky-flipping seal automatically attacked, smashing the two gods who wanted to escape into meat paste. Not a single one escaped, and they all died. At the same time, Chu Feng followed up. Grabbing the brick that had flown back, he rushed towards Shi Huang. You! Shi Huang was shocked and angry. Look at my brick, no, sky-flipping seal. Chu Feng shouted and began to smash out the shrunken coffin again. Do you dare to fight me fairly? Shi Huang shouted. As he spoke, he produced a secret treasure. The void flowed with colorful lights, and all kinds of flying swords, bronze bells, and mysterious golden pagodas were arranged here. These were all the highest level weapons he could use, and they blocked Chu Feng and the sky-flipping seal. Don't you feel shameless and shameless? You've already made a god attack me, and you still have the nerve to talk about a fair fight? Chu Feng laughed coldly. After the brick left his hand, all the weapons in front of him exploded. Moreover, the sky-flipping seal instantly floated above Shi Huang's head, suppressing and imprisoning him. Chu Feng rushed over, kicked him over, and quickly sealed him. He then grabbed him by the collar and captured him alive. Taking the head of a young master from an army of thousands is as easy as taking something out of my pocket. I'm really a heaven-warping genius. Chu Feng sighed. The events that happened in an instant were dazzling. Shi Huang was actually captured, and two gods were killed. That young rogue cultivator was selling melons in front of Grandma Wang, and it made people speechless. In the dark, Chu Feng asked Gu Chunhai, Old Gu, is what you said just now reliable? Yes, as long as you do business with that organization, they'll be responsible for your safety. Gu Chunhai replied. Not long ago, Chu Feng had a short discussion with old Gu about whether he should swallow the humiliation here and keep a low profile to ensure his safety. But that wasn't his style, and he didn't want to be humiliated. Old Gu told him to buy Grandma Meng's soup. As long as he did business with this organization, he would be safe here at the heavenly immortal waterfall. Therefore, Chu Feng acted quite straightforwardly and didn't keep a low profile at all. He rushed to the middle-aged woman selling the time furnace and said, Senior, I have business to do with you. Make sure I don't get killed first. This woman came from the same organization as the old woman who was selling Grandma Meng's soup. No problem. Those who do business with us always live very comfortably. The middle-aged woman smiled. Chu Feng was afraid that he would be killed on the way to buy Grandma Meng's soup. He was worried that old Gu wouldn't be able to handle it alone. After all, there were definitely many god kings here. Now that the middle-aged woman expressed her stance, the expressions of some people changed. The people who wanted to make a move had ugly expressions. They all felt that they had underestimated this rogue cultivator too much. He knew a lot of things and actually understood the rules of that organization. "Little thief, do you want to live or die?" Chu Feng shouted at Shi Huang. "You're courting death." Shi Huang was unconvinced. He didn't believe that Chu Feng would dare to kill him. "Huh." Chu Feng didn't say anything and gave him a big slap on the face, causing blood to flow out of his mouth and nose. Moreover, he held the heaven-overturning seal and was about to slap it down. "Show mercy, don't kill him." In the distance, someone shouted. He finally couldn't keep his cool and couldn't sit still anymore. That person was a God King level Tao protector. The core descendant of such a powerful race was a genius youth who was almost equivalent to a young lord. If he traveled like this, he would naturally have the protection of a God King. Chu Feng nodded and said, "Sure, help me pay for 8 to 10 bowls of Grandma Meng's soup." "Why don't you just rob someone?" Someone was angry. Chapter 1128. Shi Huang was unable to restrain his anger after hearing Chu Feng's words. This was going too far. This wandering cultivator had smashed his head with a brick and even threatened to rob him. It was truly infuriating. As for the divine king in the dark, he was also speechless. The Shi clan was so powerful that they had survived since the most ancient times. They had endured the most difficult times and experienced the dark period when cultivators were almost extinct. Now, their clan was flourishing, yet someone actually dared to rob them. The others were also stunned and tongue-tied. All of them revealed astonished expressions as they looked towards Chu Feng. The dark-faced Ingwudi, the pale-faced young Buddha, the immortal Ingzhe Xian, and the elegant Linoy girl. The group looked at each other, speechlessly. This matter was a bit outrageous. A wandering cultivator was robbing the Shi clan's young master and a divine king in public. "Little brother, don't be agitated. Be careful of careless talk." Finally, the divine king spoke again. Bang! In the end, Chu Feng directly smashed Shi Huang's head, causing him to see stars and bleed. He was so angry that he wanted to stomp his feet and curse at the intolerable bullying. "Try threatening me again." Chu Feng shouted at the divine king. He was fairly impolite and wasn't afraid in the slightest. The divine king approached silently from a distance. He didn't reveal his whereabouts and wanted to deal a fatal blow to Chu Feng. He was still trying to calm Chu Feng down. "Little friend, your actions aren't showing enough respect to the Shi clan. I suggest you carefully understand our clan. If you want to go far on the path of evolution, there are some people, sects, and aristocratic families that you need to revere." The divine king's words were neither salty nor indifferent. He was somewhat confident and confident. "Try threatening me again if you have the guts." Chu Feng was fearless and didn't seem to believe in heresy. Moreover, he was fairly direct. With a bang, he smashed Shi Huang's head violently. This made Shi Huang want to cry. For a moment, his head was covered in blood, and he felt dizzy. "Stop!" The divine king was furious. He was approaching, but he felt a bit uneasy when he saw the middle-aged woman selling the time furnace. He berated, "Young man, don't make a mistake." Bang! Chu Feng didn't say a word and started to knock on Shi Huang's head again. That time, he really wanted to smash a big hole in Shi Huang's head. Blood spurted out, and it was quite a miserable scene. F***CK, I can't take it anymore. The God King is threatening you. Why do you keep hitting my head? Go hit the God King." Shi Huang shouted. He was humiliated, angry, pained, and depressed. His head was about to split open. He was really afraid that Chu Feng would smash his head into a rotten watermelon. "Fellow Taoist, actually, our Shi clan would also like to buy Granny Meng's soup." Finally, the God King no longer paid attention to Chu Feng and started negotiating with the people from that organization. He then looked at the middle-aged woman selling the time furnace. Without a doubt, this was his trump card. He wanted to use this organization to protect Shi Huang. Chu Feng shuddered. The other party was taking drastic measures to make him lose his protection. Could they count on old Gu to kill his way out? Gu Chenhai secretly transmitted his voice and said, "Don't be afraid. This organization is still very particular. They won't push away the previous customers just because someone else wants to buy something. In particular, the things sold by this organization were too expensive. Not to mention the time furnace. Even the Granny Ming soup was frighteningly expensive. 1 tael of mother gold for a bowl of soup was really outrageous. Cough. Chu Feng spoke first. Senior, don't listen to his nonsense. He's just talking nonsense. He might say he wants to buy it, but can he really put it into action? I don't believe he has mother gold on him. That God King looked like a middle-aged man. His black hair was loose, and he looked very heroic. He said, "Young man, don't use your ignorance to estimate the depths of the Shi clan. It's just mother gold. The Shi clan can take it out. Wanting to buy Granny Ming's soup is nothing. Do you know how to speak human language?" Chu Feng cast him a sidelong glance, and then began to beat Shi Huang's head. The latter was so angry that he was trembling all over. His head was covered in blood, and he was about to faint. Shi Huang wanted to resist and fight to the death with Chu Feng. However, after seeing the brick in his hand that could easily kill a god, he hesitated and his body stiffened. Chu Feng said again, "Who doesn't know how to talk big? If you have the guts, take out a few taels of mother gold and let me have a look." The Shi clan's God King was momentarily speechless. Who would carry mother gold around for no reason? That thing was too rare. Even his secret treasures didn't have the chance to integrate a trace of it. This kind of strategic material would be melted into the clan's guardian weapon. Chu Feng feigned disdain and said, "How about it? You don't have mother gold, do you? What's your clan? What a mortal inheritance. They're all just for show, just bragging." The Shi clan's God King said with a gloomy expression, "A mere wandering cultivator dares to boast shamelessly. You keep saying you want to buy Granny Ming's soup. I'll wait and see how you're going to buy it. Do you think you're worthy of taking out mother gold? If you can't complete the transaction, you'll be lying and making trouble out of nothing. I believe this Dao friend won't let you off." He looked at the middle-aged woman who was selling the time furnace and reminded her that a wandering cultivator like Chu Feng couldn't afford it. He was making trouble out of nothing. The middle-aged woman looked at Chu Feng with a profound gaze and a strange expression on her face. There was a hint of inquiry and warning in her eyes. Seeing this, Chu Feng immediately patted his chest and said, "Buying Granny Ming's soup is nothing. The Shi clan is so pitiful. They don't even have mother gold. They can't even compare to a wandering cultivator like me. Please call me God Tycoon. This young master is rich and imposing. Go buy it if you have the guts. What are you bragging about?" Shi Huang couldn't hold it in anymore. The God King's expression also sank as he stared at him. This youth really didn't know the difference between life and death. He was being unreasonable to the Shi clan time and time again, putting them on the spot. He was destined to be killed without mercy. Chu Feng first smashed Shi Huang's head until it bled and became dizzy. Then, he dragged him to the stone arch bridge in an ostentatious manner to buy soup. He secretly asked, "Old Gu, I want to buy a bowl of soup, but I'm afraid something will happen if I drink it directly. Is the soup sold by this old woman reliable?" Gu Chenhai replied, "Don't worry, it's absolutely reliable. The soup is pure and the medicinal effects are mellow. The credibility of the person who runs this business is guaranteed." When Chu Feng heard this, he immediately had a plan. "Auntie, give me 2 taels of Granny Ming's soup," said Chu Feng. When everyone heard this, their expressions became strange. This youth really dared to ask for 2 taels of mother gold. He wanted to buy 2 bowls of Granny Ming's soup. What a joke. Do you have it? I don't believe that a wandering cultivator can really buy 2 bowls of rare tonic. Someone sneered. It wasn't just the Shi clan. Even the others felt that it was outrageous. Even they weren't so extravagant and couldn't take out mother gold. How could a youth do it? Haha. The Shi clan's godly monarch sneered. Emperor Rock, the young girl who resembled Linoy, Zhong Xiao, Ing Jiaxian, and the other youths were very surprised. Some people had already walked close to observe. How was this young, itinerant cultivator going to deal with the aftermath? I was wrong. I want 1 kilogram of Granny Ming's soup. Chu Feng handed over 2 small pieces of sky gold stone. This thing was actually quite heavy, so it didn't look big. he had asked when he first arrived. 1 kilogram of sky gold stone could be exchanged for a bowl of Granny Meng's soup. Thinking about it carefully, Old Goo's coffin was impressive. It could be considered a huge fortune. Back then, Old Goo was a typical nouveau riche. The group of people was shocked. Did this kid really take out natural treasures? Chu Feng smiled and slapped Shi Huang before saying, I don't have anything else, but compared to the Shi clan, I'm rich and overbearing. He wasn't afraid of being targeted. In any case, he would run away after completing his mission. It was a one-off deal. This made Old Goo very unhappy. He was using his coffin to squander so generously. He was too shameless. Then, Old Goo watched eagerly and endured his anger. After all, Chu Feng had successfully bought 2 bowls instead of 1. He reckoned that he would be given 1 bowl. However, he nearly stomped his feet in anger. Chu Feng kept 1 bowl for himself and handed the other bowl to the donkey spirit. The Manchurian tiger had been silent the entire time. It was Chu Feng's request. After coming here, he didn't say a word and just followed by his side. Brother, you're so loyal. Now, the Manchurian tiger was extremely happy. He finally couldn't help but speak. He grinned, revealing a mouthful of white teeth. Little thief, you used my coffin to buy Granny Meng's soup, but in the end, I didn't even get to drink a drop. Old Goo gritted his teeth and was about to explode. Aren't you in coffin? All right, I'll buy another bowl for you, he replied secretly. Following that, Chu Feng bought another bowl of soup and said, Auntie, another kilogram of Granny Meng's soup. The group of people was speechless and stared blankly. Then, under everyone's shocked gazes, they saw this wastrel pour out a bowl of soup and pour it over his broken brick. Sure, clan members, what are you looking at? We don't have anything else, but we're rich and overbearing. This is how we drink Granny Meng's soup. Buy 2 bowls, drink 1, pour the other. Chu Feng said smugly. The Shi clan group was furious. Even they couldn't take out heavenly materials such as mother gold and Granny Meng's stone. Yet a small itinerant cultivator was so high profile. They were so angry that they couldn't say anything. In fact, Old Goo could consume it and use the Granny Meng stone to absorb the juice without wasting the medicinal properties. After all, he could emit his blood energy normally. Senior, do you accept an IOU? Chu Feng asked in a low voice as he discussed with the old woman selling the soup. Considering your current good record, I can't consider it, but you have to buy at least 4 bowls yourself. Sure, no problem. 1 more bowl, that's enough, Chu Feng said. Then, Chu Feng looked at the Shi clan's divine king and said, Write an IOU. Your clan owes me 6 taels of mother gold. What do you mean? The Shi clan's divine king said coldly. I've kidnapped your young master. If he doesn't give it to me, I'll chop him to death. Chu Feng shouted. Everyone was speechless. After going around in a big circle and challenging for a fight for so long, it was finally back to robbery. This is extortion, provocation, and making an enemy of the Shi clan. The divine king said coldly. That's right, you're right. But there's a precondition. You provoked me first and even wanted to kill me. This is the price you have to pay for kicking an iron plate. Chu Feng didn't want to talk nonsense with him and issued a final ultimatum. If he didn't give it to him, he would chop him to death. The Shi clan's divine king was furious. Shi Huang, on the other hand, was extremely uneasy. He could feel the threat of death. This young man wasn't just talking. He was really going to smack him to death with the so-called heaven-overturning seal. Fine, my Shi clan accepts, but I can only write you an IOU of 5 taels of mother gold. Deal, write it. Chu Feng agreed happily and said, Generous enough, right? I won't even bargain for you. Little beast. The Shi clan's divine king wanted to curse out loud, but he held back in the end. His lips were trembling and his face was ashen. Auntie, will you accept this IOU? Chu Feng asked. No problem. The Shi clan is still very trustworthy. We can accept it. The Shi clan's divine king was furious. To hell with trustworthiness. Wasn't it because their organization was too powerful and they weren't afraid of people going back on their word? The old woman on the bridge frowned and said, My apologies, We have a total of 8 bowls of Granny Meng's soup. You've already bought half of them, so there are 4 left. The IOU you gave us is only left with 1 tael of mother gold. Chu Feng heard this and asked, "Is there anything else? I'll buy some." "There is. Other than the furnace of time, you can choose any of the other items." Not far away, the middle-aged woman spoke. She was no longer indifferent and revealed a smile on her face. They liked buyers like Chu Feng the most. Chu Feng was happy and said, "All right, I just happen to be lacking an item fished out from the heavenly waterfall. Now that I've gathered it, I can enter the waterfall for seclusion." He had already heard from Old Gu that holding an item from the heavenly waterfall and entering seclusion within the waterfall would yield twice the results with half the effort. It would have miraculous effects. The young girl resembling Linoi, the young Buddha, the Wind Phoenix Fairy, Zhong Xiao, and Ingzhi Xian were all speechless. What had happened here was a little ridiculous. Chapter 1129. The ground was littered with old objects, ranging from armors to lampstands to magnetic marrow lotus roots. There were quite a few good things here, and Chu Feng was dazzled by the number of them. He knew that this was a test of his eyesight. 90% of the items here were probably fakes. For instance, the heavenly flame fan that seemed to be woven from the feathers of the golden crow looked astonishing. From time to time, an indistinct 3-legged divine bird would appear and disappear amidst the waves of heat. But was this real? Chu Feng was somewhat tempted by some of the items after some observation. For instance, that magnetic marrow lotus root was a favorite of domain researchers. Afterward, he used the fiery eyes to observe carefully and found a few broken flags among the pile of scrap metal. They were all small, less than a foot in length, and their luster was dim. But his fiery eyes could see their insides. For instance, the earthy yellow flag wasn't simple. There was also a dark red flag with dancing flames. Chu Feng was astonished. Why did it seem that 90% of them were rare and extraordinary items? He reckoned that this was definitely a highly skilled faker. As expected, some of the objects had strange phenomena, but only a small part of them appeared. Most of the objects were fake and were forged together. Little friend, have you chosen a satisfactory heavenly object? These things are all fished out from the sky-piercing waterfall. It's time-consuming and laborious, and every item is stained with the blood of experts. It's too difficult to fish things out from the immortal waterfall. The middle-aged woman from the organization spoke without a smile. "Let me take a look," said Chu Feng. More and more people arrived in the vicinity. Many powerful races and evolver sects had arrived after receiving reports from their genius disciples. All of them were experts with frighteningly high statuses. Even existences in the eyes of primal chaos were apprehensive of them. They came out to greet some special beings. For instance, the people from the Buddhist race had arrived. That was a stone Buddha. His skin was petrified like a statue, but he could still move with a sorrowful expression on his face. Who is this? Don't the Buddhist race have flesh and blood bodies? Why is there a stone Buddha here? Sure, this is a true Buddha. Back then, when he competed with his clansmen for the position of the future Buddha Lord, he almost succeeded. If it wasn't for the other person being too outstanding, then the position would have belonged to him. Everyone felt apprehensive in their hearts when they heard this. How formidable was the Buddhist clan? They'd always been ranked in the top 5 in the Yang realm, and their position hadn't wavered since the ancient times. This stone Buddha had almost become the future Buddha Lord. With such an identity, his strength was definitely unfathomable, causing others to have no choice but to respect him. The white-robed Arhut immediately went forward with a respectful expression and bowed to him to show his respect. Other than that, there were 2 more sons of Buddha. One of them wore a golden robe, and even his skin was golden as if he was forged from gold. The other was dressed in black, and the Buddhist light behind his head shone brightly, giving him an extraordinary appearance. The Buddhist race is extremely powerful and has already supported the hegemon of the West. Not long ago, they even fought a fierce battle with the commander sent out by Yongzhou. It was truly earth-shattering. Some people were discussing with solemn expressions. Now that the world was divided into three, the awakened hegemon of Yongzhou in the east, the terrifying existence of Estate in the west, and the ancient expert of Shanstei in the south had begun to send followers to attack cities and seize land. The three factions were contending for hegemony, and they wanted to unify the Yang realm. Many people gathered around the stone Buddha. Even a youth from the Golden Crow race walked over to greet him with great reverence. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. This was choosing a side. The Golden Crow race was considered neutral before and didn't lean towards anyone, but now they were walking together with the people of the Buddhist race. This meant that they were going to support that terrifying evolver of his state in the West. King Dari has officially made a decision. This is a major event. Someone sighed. King Dari of the Golden Crow race was a powerful leader of his generation. He was ranked third among the celestial venerables, and his strength shook the Yang realm. Who dared to not obey him? It could be said that this third celestial venerable of the Yang realm was extremely powerful. He looked down on the western region and swept through the heavens. In several generations, it was really difficult to find a worthy opponent. Not to mention the overall strength of the race. King Dari alone was enough to make the Golden Crow race famous in the Yang realm. That was because even the celestial venerables of the top 5 clans couldn't compare to King Dari, the third in the world, who dared to go against him in a battle of the same level. At the same time, it wasn't that the Golden Crow race didn't have any old powerhouses. If anyone dared to come out and fight to the death with the Golden Crow race, the ancestor of King Dari would definitely take action. In fact, in the current world, 90% of the powerhouses were dying. At that level, their lifespan was not enough. They usually went into seclusion to seal their vitality and nourish their blood. No one dared to act rashly. In the entire Yang realm, it could be said that the celestial venerables had become the main characters and had the power to act. Of course, this was also relatively speaking. Among the celestial venerables, there were also as many as 60% who didn't have much lifespan left and were on the verge of death. This was the current general situation and environment. After evolving to a certain level, many people stopped moving forward. They were suffering for years and going into seclusion to find a way to break free from the hellish swamp and fight for their lives. The Gu race had also come, and as expected, they walked together with them. People have long heard that the Gu race was very close to the Buddhist race, and they were even willing to be the mounts of some bodhisattvas and true Buddhas. In the Yang realm, those who dared to call themselves bodhisattvas and Buddhas were definitely extremely transcendent existences, far from the Buddhas of the lesser netherworld. It was just like how an evolver at the Illuminator realm could illuminate the heavens in the lesserine realm. In the Yang realm, only the celestial venerables dared to build temples in various places and let the creatures of the various races in the world worship them. A top-notch celestial venerables could illuminate the vast territory of the Yang realm and manifest themselves everywhere. An old Swanee with black and gold fur accompanied the stone Buddha with a smile. Next, people saw that the peacock lineage, a powerful race in the Yang realm, had also walked over to the stone Buddha. This made people astonished again. The peacock race was not an ordinary race. Their race's white peacock was ranked first under the heavens when he was at the God King realm. After he ascended to the Empyrean realm, he was ranked 15th under the heavens in a short period of time. This kind of achievement, this kind of speed, suppressed the various Empyreans to the point that they couldn't breathe. It can't be right. The white tiger race also went over. This is making their stand clear. For a moment, people were dumbfounded. This was a powerful beast race that dared to fight with the dragon race. Although the number of pure-blooded clansmen was extremely small and there were only single digits in every generation, once they started fighting, they dared to slay dragons. The young lady from the white tiger race looked gentle and beautiful, but once she furrowed her brows, the corners of her eyes and brows would look slightly evil. She was dressed in white as she followed the clan elder over to have an audience with the stone Buddha. Everyone felt a little dizzy. Terrifying evolvers were bound to gather around the overlord of the Western he state. From the Buddha race to the Golden Crow race, then to the Peacock race, the Swanee race, and the White Tiger race. This was just the tip of the iceberg. Presumably, there would be even more. As expected, dozens of races appeared in the blink of an eye. They were all powerful races that were famous in the Yang realm and stood together with those people. For a moment, the young beauty from the White Tiger race, the young master of the Golden Crow race, the young divine king of the Peacock race, the three sons of Buddha, and the outstanding talent of the Swanee race became the center of attention. A group of geniuses from other races appeared around them, as though they were stars surrounding the moon. The fairy from the White Tiger race is truly peerless in her generation. She has a celestial appearance and jade bones, someone complimented. The young divine king of the Peacock race is destined to fight his way into the top 5 divine kings this time. The divine king ranking has been delayed again and again. It's about time for a new ranking. Son of Buddha, the young master of the Golden Crow race. I hope we can join forces and fight once we enter the battlefield and dominate the younger generation. Many people came forward to compliment them. The few people who were surrounded in the center also spoke with a smile and contacted other experts. They were destined to enter the battlefield together. It was obvious that all the races were choosing sides. The current world was divided into 3 factions, and it was already the most chaotic era. Even the Rock Emperor, Ingzhixian, and the young lady suspected to be Linoy in the distance had made their own choices. At present, these people were standing outside the battlefield, but they were also surrounded by people. These people were like blazing suns. After joining a faction, they would be given special attention. They were the seeds of the future, and many people complimented them. After that, another powerful figure from a faction arrived. It was a guest from the Harmony Prefecture in the east. The person who had revived in the Harmony Prefecture had appeared. His disciple had personally come. Although he was called a disciple, he was actually very old. He was shrouded in chaotic energy, and his divine eyes were like lightning. Moreover, he had brought a young man with him. He was extraordinary, especially his pair of eyes. They were truly astonishing. There were golden runes in his eyes that glistened brightly. Fiery eyes of truth. Some people were astonished. This is a disciple I took in after meeting a few old friends when I was roaming the East Victory divine continent. The old man smiled. For a moment, everyone was shaken. The fiery eyes of truth could see through all things in the early stages. Once it evolved to the later stages, it would be even more wondrous. It was related to some great secret on the path of evolution. Everyone was shocked and envious of that young man. At this moment, the young lady who looked like Linoy said with a smile, "In prehistoric times, there were records that the later stages of the fiery eyes of truth could help one evolve and seize treasures of heaven and earth. Outsiders don't know the specifics, but this senior brother's Tao bones were naturally formed." At this moment, even the stone Buddha on the opposite side looked over. As for the group of young people, there was no need to talk about it. The 3 Buddha sons, the beauty from the White Tiger race, and the young divine king from the Peacock race were also moved as they gazed over. The Rock Emperor, who was standing in the distance, sighed and said, "It seems that a hero is about to rise with an unstoppable momentum. The surface of his body is shrouded in a halo of the great Tao. This is truly astonishing," Ingzhixian said softly. Her gaze was deep as she nodded slightly at the young man from the Harmony Prefecture. At this moment, Chu Feng was still choosing an item. When he heard the fiery eyes of truth, he was stunned and couldn't help but raise his head. Comparatively speaking, his place was extremely shabby. It was true that no one showed interest in him. He didn't even have a meteorite, let alone being surrounded by stars. Chapter 1130. This is a spirit egg born from the essence of heaven and earth. Someone asked in astonishment. The people here didn't have the fiery eyes, but some people had the heavenly eye. Meanwhile, some of the older generation's divine senses were even more terrifyingly powerful. They immediately saw some clues. The youth brought by the elder, shrouded in primal chaos from Harmony Prefecture, was extraordinary. His innate aura was restrained and wasn't tainted by the slightest bit of the mortal world. It could even be said that this was a heavenly embryo. Normally, creatures that were born would be surrounded by the world's turbid energy. However, he had cut off the turbid roots, and his body contained innate essence. And yes, he was originally a spirit egg contained within a 9-aperture divine stone from East Victory Divine Continent's Flower Fruit Mountain. He was born 9 years ago, and his constitution is indeed extraordinary. The elder from Harmony Prefecture said with a smile. His name was Hao Yuan, and he was the disciple of that Harmony Prefecture overlord. Even his eyes were covered by the primal chaos around his body, becoming hazy. He was very powerful, but his words were even more attractive. Some people were shocked and felt deeply surprised. I know, I also heard about it back then. I heard that a stone embryo appeared and was actually powerful to such a degree. Innate fiery eyes. Many people were moved and looked at the young man beside the elder. He was over 9 meters tall and looked quite heroic. His sword-like eyebrows reached his temples, and his eyes were full of spirit. He could be considered a handsome man with an oppressive, heroic spirit. However, his arms were made of stone, which attracted people's attention. His hands were quite powerful and made people suspect that he could break divine weapons with his bare hands. He is a spirit egg born from heaven and earth. He arrived in this chaotic world and is destined to join the army and fight bloody battles. The elder from Harmony Prefecture, Hao Yuan, said. Everyone was shaken and felt that Harmony Prefecture's side was extraordinary. They could even find this kind of Tao embryo. Could this be the will of the heavens? His name is Great Sky. Hao Yuan spoke the name of the stone embryo. Good name, not bad. Even the usually calm stone Buddha spoke. Even though both sides belonged to different factions, a strange expression appeared in his eyes. In the distance, Chu Feng was startled. He was a bit sensitive to the word Great Sky, because the Time Furnace's words contained this keyword and mentioned the flames of Great Sky. Was this a coincidence? This is the name bestowed by the Grand Master, the elder said with a smile. When they heard this, everyone was visibly moved. His master's ancestor was the overlord of the Harmony Province. Back then, he'd once ruled a 20th of the Yang Realm's territory, yet he'd perished after suffering a lightning tribulation. Then, he'd revive in the present world and wanted to reform the world. He was a peerless overlord. Chu Feng was moved. He felt that the person from Yongzhou wouldn't casually come up with a name. Could it be that he knew of the flames of Grand Sky? This was a shocking clue. He carefully sized up this great sky that was born from heaven and earth truly was extraordinary and extremely astonishing. There was a halo of great Tao on the surface of his body, his flesh body perfectly merging with the stone arm. It wasn't abrupt at all. In fact, other than bestowing the name Big Sky, the overlord of the Harmony Prefecture had once said that when Big Sky shed its stone-like appearance, it would be the time for him to evolve and step onto the right path, gazing at the ultimate path. The stone Buddha spoke again. Although it is in the land of the far west, an old Buddha of my clan had a premonition. Back then, on a whim, he made a divination and discovered that a strange object from beyond the heavens had descended and touched the land of the Dongsheng Divine Prefecture. I believe it has something to do with this young man. He was normally a man of few words, but today, he took the initiative to speak in detail. This made everyone feel deeply surprised, and they quickly realized that the Buddha clan must have deduced something or something extraordinary back then. Hao Yuan revealed a smile and said, "Correct. Back then, a strange object descended from the heavens and fused with the stone core, allowing him to be born in advance and become the Great Sky." What? Heaven and earth resonated, and the strange object fused with the stone core, creating him. The stone Buddha frowned. This was the first time he revealed such an emotional fluctuation. For a moment, this place became quiet. Everyone looked toward the Great Sky. He was very steady as he silently cupped his fists towards everyone. Then he nodded in greeting. The more Chu Feng listened, the more he felt that something wasn't right. Back then, he caused a great commotion when he escaped from the ultimate land of reincarnation. Was he misunderstood by others? Back then, a strand of natural substance had indeed escaped from the stone jar, but in the end, it was absorbed by the stone core. That was the supreme essence from beyond the heavens that created the great sky. Hao Yuan didn't hide anything and revealed that Yongzhou's destiny had returned to him. It was predestined in the dark. Everyone was subdued. The natural substance of heaven and earth and the strange object from beyond the realm had all returned to Yongzhou. It seemed to indeed foretell something. There were historical records regarding this kind of phenomenon. That kind of natural substance and strange object from beyond the realm would occasionally appear, and it was indeed like the descent of the mandate of heaven. There were a few examples of this, and it had once created unfathomable characters and imperial dynasties. It was reported that Li Sanlong, Li Su, was once a character with this kind of mandate of heaven. Everyone's expression changed, and even the stone Buddha frowned. Only Chu Feng was stroking his chin there. He was thinking, from a certain point of view, could this stone core be considered his son? The world's essence descended into the Yang realm and entered the nine-aperture immortal stone, creating the great sky's birth. Wasn't this a child he had inadvertently created? Even though this child was already taller than him, regardless of whether others believed it or not. Chu Feng first acknowledged this in his heart. This was considered his son. I don't care if you guys believe it or not. In any case, I believe it, he muttered. Although he knew that the young man was terrifying, he felt a sense of superiority in his heart. He looked down on him. You're my son. In the distance, a group of people exclaimed in astonishment. Even the Rock Emperor, the Arhut, Ing Jiaxian, and the others went forward to greet the great sky and chat. On Chu Feng's side, apart from the Manchurian tiger, who cultivated silent meditation, there was no one else. It was truly a desolate place where the stars revolved around the moon. He no longer paid them any attention and began to seriously choose his items again. Little brother, have you chosen? The middle-aged woman urged. Her voice was calm and indifferent. At this time, even the stone Buddha and the younger brother of the Golden Crow race's King Dari had arrived. They were all looking at the time furnace. This was the main business. Yes, I'm almost done choosing. I'll consider it one last time. Chu Feng possessed the fiery eyes, but he only used them covertly and didn't expose them. He stared at a heavily worn silver lamp. It was slightly dilapidated, but it gave off an extraordinary feeling. But in the end, he gave up on it and looked at a small spear that was as long as a chopstick. It was dark and swarthy, and it was made of wood. It was very inconspicuous. He weighed it in his hand and found that it was very ordinary. Its quality was similar to that of ordinary wooden chopsticks. He really couldn't see anything special about it. In particular, the tip of the small spear had rotted a little. This made him speechless. He didn't believe it first, but when he touched it with his hands and used a knife to cut it, he actually dug out some rot. Chu Feng was stunned. He was starting to doubt his own judgment. Although he felt that this thing was strange, he didn't have any strong evidence to support it. He secretly hid a few grains of reincarnation soil in his fingernails. Just now, he felt that these grains were slightly abnormal and slightly hot. That was why he chose this spear. However, the tip of this thing had rotted. How could it be good if it wasn't resistant to rot? Chu Feng had already put the grains of reincarnation soil back into the stone jar. He didn't plan to take it out to test it. After all, there were too many big shots here, and it was somewhat risky. He decided to choose this small wooden spear. At this time, Dakong walked over and looked at the things on the stall. Hao Yuan and the stone Buddha were looking at the time furnace, while Dakong lowered his head to choose other artifacts. Yeah, that little rogue cultivator chose a wooden spear. Interesting. Did you guys see that? The wooden spear has rotted. What kind of gaze is that? The group of people laughed, and some people came over. However, Dakong's words made those people shut up. Can you let me take a look at this wooden spear? No, I've already chosen it. Chu Feng shook his head. At the same time, he said in his heart, Eldest son, don't fight with your father. You're a step too late. If Hao Yuan and Da Kong knew that he was actually thinking about this, they would definitely beat him to death. Are you sure you want to choose this? The middle-aged woman asked. And this is it. Chu Feng nodded. Good, we're even. The middle-aged woman agreed happily. Senior, what's the origin of this wooden spear? Someone asked, thinking that this organization definitely knew about it. The middle-aged woman said, We've studied it for a long time and threw it in the warehouse for millions of years. However, many famous figures and even leaders have personally tried it, but they didn't feel that it had any special use. Many people laughed when they heard this. Even a seller said so. One could imagine the value of this wooden spear. This might be a primal chaos root. Someone whispered. There were several kinds of primal chaos roots in this world, all of which were priceless. However, they were all rooted in forbidden areas. Outsiders had no fate at all, let alone digging them up. They couldn't even see them. Impossible. The middle-aged woman shook her head and said, We once did an experiment and dug out some wood chips from it. In the end, after feeding them to ordinary creatures, there was no abnormal reaction that a primal chaos root should have. It only made a few ordinary creatures have diarrhea for a few days. Everyone was speechless when they heard this. Then they laughed. It was not even as good as pure poison. After our verification, the end of this wooden spear has indeed rotted. Although the wood material is extraordinary, it is not too tough and indestructible. When they heard this, everyone completely lost interest in this object. Even Chu Feng was speechless when he heard this. This damned wooden spear was too disappointing. It made him lose face. What use did it have? Why did it cause the reincarnation soil to heat up? Chu Feng decided that he would properly study it later. Of course, he was not convinced on the surface. He said, to enter the sky-reaching waterfall, one needs to fish out an old object from inside. I'll choose this. You guys don't understand. This is the object that helped me achieve Tao. The few fairy-like young women couldn't help but laugh out loud. Chapter 1131. Big Sky was more than one. 9 meters tall, with sword-like eyebrows that reached his temples. His eyes were golden, and there were visible runes that emitted a terrifying radiance. He stared at the wooden spear in Chu Feng's hand with great reluctance. However, he didn't say anything in the end. He turned around and went to choose other artifacts. Chu Feng cursed in his heart. Could this be the so-called mother-son bond? Did his eldest son also feel the extraordinariness of this spear like him? In reality, even he felt guilty. How could this be his blood and son? Strictly speaking, Big Sky only obtained a wisp of the essence of creation because of him, which caused the heaven and earth to become peaceful and gave birth to the spirit egg in advance. If Hao Yuan and Big Sky knew that there was someone who couldn't forget and wanted to take Big Sky as his son, they would definitely explode in anger and beat Chu Feng to death. Young man, if I were you, I would definitely be delighted and respectfully offer it to Tao, friend Big Sky, someone suddenly said. He was also a young man with long brown hair and a bronze-colored body. He had matured prematurely and looked very valiant. He actually had 3 heads and 6 arms. This was a disciple of a race with an extremely powerful bloodline. Those who could have such an appearance were all gods and devils. Chu Feng didn't even raise his head. He looked at the other artifacts and said, Because you are indeed not me, you can only be a small star among the stars, or perhaps a large meteorite. I, on the other hand, am destined to become a person like the sun and illuminate the past, present, and future. Hiss! The group of people grinded their teeth. This young wandering cultivator was really in high spirits, conceited, and confident. He had just beaten up Shi Huang, the young master of the Shi clan, and extorted him, causing the Shi clan to vomit blood. Now he was still so conceited. He was really jumpy. As for Big Sky, he was the personal disciple of the grand disciple of that existence in Yong Prefecture. His true identity was unreachable, and in a sense, he could be considered one of the young masters of Yong Prefecture. Someone said disdainfully, "This is a little fellow who has never been to the battlefield. He's good at talking now, but when he really goes to the battlefield and sees tens of millions of corpses, he'll probably pee his pants." This was a white-haired young man, but he was already a god with extraordinary strength. Have you experienced something like this before? Otherwise, how can you be so sure? How many times did you pee yourself? Chu Feng cast him a sidelong glance, and then said, "If I go to the battlefield, I will definitely be bestowed the title of king, someone who's going to become an emperor, overlooking the world, becoming an extreme. Comparing yourself to me, isn't that a joke?" Everyone was speechless. This young rogue cultivator was really overconfident. He even dared to say such words? Currently, there were only 3 poles in the world. They were the Eastern Yongzhou, the Western Hezhou, and the Southern Zhanzhou. He wanted to be the 4th pole. If not for the organization that sold the time furnace and Granny Meng's soup promising to protect him, some of the people present would have long since made a move to kill him. Chu Feng did not feel any pressure at all. After leaving this place, who would know who? Anyway, no one would know him now. Disperse, disperse. Everyone, make your preparations. We're about to enter the sky-piercing waterfall and become an Empyrean in one night. We'll meet again later and discuss the Tao again. Chu Feng waved his hand, looking like an old man who was proud of his age. The crowd had different expressions. Some were grinding their teeth, some were astounded, and some were mocking him. "Little brother, have you been tricked? Don't you know what kind of place the sky-piercing immortal waterfall is?" asked the woman who sold the time furnace. Chu Feng sensed that something was not right when he saw her expression. He held the sky-gold sarcophagus in his sleeve and asked, "Old Gu, are you trying to trick me?" At the same time, he asked the middle-aged woman humbly, "What's going on here?" The middle-aged woman said, "Becoming Empyrean in one night is just a rumor. It's just a beautiful legend in the world. The terror and bloodshed during the process isn't beautiful at all." Damn it. Chu Feng immediately had the urge to smack the palm-sized sarcophagus. He must have been tricked by old Gu. This furnace isn't bad. It's fated with my tribe, the stone Buddha in the distance said. He was touching the time furnace reluctantly. The eyes of Hao Yuan from the Harmony Prefecture flickered. He believed that as long as he brought the furnace back to the Harmony Prefecture, his grandmaster, the peerless ruler, would be able to comprehend it. That organization had once comprehended the mysteries of various scriptures from the furnace, and in the end, they had created the world-shaking 10th technique, Hell's Return. How shocking was that? Especially since the leader of the organization had yet to explore the deepest part of the time furnace, which implied that there were even more shocking treasures in the truth. Suddenly, a cold laugh came from the distance, which led to a commotion and chaos. The reason was that one of the strongest clans in the world, the Hung clan, had appeared. Clouds and mist rolled in that area, and a beam of eternal light spread out from an extremely distant place. An old man, who seemed to have existed for eternity, suddenly appeared in that place. The old man of the Hung clan had arrived. This was a clan that was not afraid of the Buddha race, a clan that was not weak at all. When the old man looked at the stone Buddha, he was incomparably domineering. His gaze was sharp, and his voice was as loud as a golden bell. Fated with the Buddha race? What a joke. Stone Buddha, do you want to have a match? Brother Hung Tuo must be joking. There's no need for that today. The stone Buddha firmly refused. One could see how powerful the Hung clan's old man was. Even the stone Buddha, who was second only to the future Buddha master, was so tyrannical that he wanted to attack. After the Hung clan appeared, the Rock Emperor immediately walked over. He represented the extremely powerful rock race. Although he was a wandering cultivator, the rock race had long since viewed him as a core genius after he became famous. Moreover, the quasi-mortal race thought very highly of him and had once provided him with the strongest pollen. In the field of evolution, the choice of pollen was very important. The Black Blood Journal one of the four most authoritative evolution journals in the Yang realm, had once published a research article explaining that the growth trajectories of the most powerful people in history were closely related to the pollen they used. The quasi-mortal race had long since taken a fancy to the Rock Emperor and had been taking care of him. Now that the Rock Emperor had gone over, some people from the quasi-mortal race also followed him. For example, Ing Wudi, Ing Zhexian, and their core disciples. The Rock race and the quasi-immortal race were too famous in the Yang realm. Standing together with the Hung clan made people tremble in fear. They stood on the southern side of the Zhan prefecture and supported the rising overlord there. Hao Yuan opened his mouth and said, "Almost everyone who should come is here. Let's discuss how to bid and buy this furnace." He signaled to the stone Buddha and Hung Ta. A total of nearly 10 unfathomable elders walked together and confronted each other while discussing in secret. Chu Feng pondered. This time Furnace was not fated with him. It was impossible for him to compete with those people. If it really fell into his hands, he reckoned that even this organization wouldn't be able to protect him. It's almost time. Those who want to enter the sky-piercing waterfall should make plans early, someone reminded him. Chu Feng sighed and was reluctant to leave. He looked back 3 times with every step he took as he walked toward the waterfall. However, his gaze would fall on the time furnace behind him from time to time. Some people were speechless. You're just a small wild cultivator, yet you dare to covet this kind of heavenly treasure? Aren't you dreaming? Many people, including Big Sky, Linoi, the Rock Emperor, Ing Zhexian, and the others, arrived in front of the waterfall. A large group of people, ranging from youths to adults, all wanted to enter the waterfall. Everyone, please look clearly at this stone wall. Once you appear, you're destined to be killed without mercy. Someone shouted, reminding everyone. In front of the waterfall, there was a stone wall covered in mist. Now, it had been forcefully dispersed by someone, revealing a rough stone body. There were words written on it, and they were written in silver and iron. Chu Feng drew a cold breath. Some terrifying things were recorded on it. The sky-piercing waterfall came from the outer realm and descended here. The source had yet to be found. All the people who went to explore never returned. It's just a universe outside the outer realm. How can it stop celestial venerables and mighty figures? Chu Feng didn't believe in heresy. Someone sneered. What do you think the so-called outer realm is? The starry sky can't stop it, and the universe can't confine it. But what about time and that astonishing world membrane? Chu Feng felt that he knew too little and shouldn't speak too much. Otherwise, it would only make him seem too unfamiliar with the Yang realm and make others suspect that there was something wrong with him. He stared at the stone wall as his heart churned violently. There was indeed someone who became a celestial venerable overnight. Moreover, it was a small cultivator who rushed into the sky overnight. There was even someone who became a mighty figure immediately and shocked the Yang realm. However, this wasn't a good thing. After such a person came out, his temperament changed greatly. It was as if he became a different person. The various races speculated that this was caused by an evil spirit possessing his body. There was an evil spirit in this sky-piercing waterfall. Chu Feng almost cursed old Gu to death. This old bastard who deceived his father. There were records from prehistoric times that the indescribable creatures that walked out of this sky-piercing waterfall were very terrifying. They had once bathed the world in blood and caused a catastrophe, causing panic in the Yang realm for several eras. Of course, the so-called walking out referred to the creatures that were possessed by the evil spirit and replaced the original owner. Their strength was terrifying beyond compare. Back then, in order to encircle and annihilate this kind of creature, many experts died. Celestial venerables shed blood and mighty figures turned into corpses. Now that he thought about it, there were still 3 to 5 creatures that hadn't been annihilated and escaped into a few forbidden lands. The people of the outside world could only sigh and not dare to fight their way in. Chu Feng looked carefully. This kind of terrifying creature had appeared several times. When the whole world tried to annihilate it, The earth had once flowed with blood, and the Yang realm was covered in gloomy clouds. That era was extremely terrifying. Old Gu, you grandson actually dared to deceive me. Chu Feng was dissatisfied as he tossed and turned the sky gold sarcophagus in his sleeve. Cough. I left in too much of a hurry at that time, so I didn't have the time to explain things to you clearly. Old Gu laughed dryly and coughed continuously. Chu Feng still wanted to trample him to death. If he wasn't afraid of some old monsters here, such as the Stone Buddha, Hao Yun, and Hung Ta, he really wanted to take out the sky blood starry sky gold dagger and chop this sarcophagus. What kind of place was this? Occasionally, some special creatures would escape, but they could trigger a catastrophe in the Yang realm. The people would be plunged into misery and suffering, and even the founder of a sect would be killed without any power to resist. What kind of land of fortune was this? This kind of place was simply too terrifying. Once an accident occurred, it meant that the bloodiest and darkest era had arrived. It was simply the source of some kind of catastrophe in the Yang realm. Chu Feng secretly asked, "Tell me, what kind of place is this? Did your big brother not leak anything?" He didn't say anything, but I know that he had obtained great benefits from this place many times, Old Gu replied. Then he sensed Chu Feng's dissatisfaction and said, "Think about it. This place is called the Heavenly Immortal Waterfall, and there's the word immortal in it. I think it's related to creatures like immortals." Chu Feng was stunned, and his heart palpitated. The ancient evil spirits were suspected to be related to the celestial race. He stared at the stone wall and learned that the biggest benefit of coming here was that it was relatively easy to break through. At the same time, it was even more shocking that it could temper the spirit and body, laying an astonishingly strong foundation. According to records, the growth trajectory of the strongest group of people in history couldn't avoid this place. Some people had once refined the publicly recognized strongest Tao fruit at certain stages. Chu Feng pondered that he could refine the strongest golden body here, and at the same time, could he also secretly temper the Tao fruit of his previous life? That was the Tao fruit of the divine king level. When he thought of this, his heart burned with incomparable anticipation. If he really succeeded, his strength would skyrocket, and his sense of security would greatly increase. Moreover, what if he used the foundation of the divine king domain to break through here and become a celestial lord? Of course, this was most likely difficult to achieve. After all, the Tao fruit of his previous life wasn't much in the Yang realm, and there were all kinds of flaws. However, one should always have a dream. What if it was about to come true? This waterfall has a trace of blood color. It's about time. Everyone, get ready. We're about to enter at any time. Someone reminded. The waterfall that was originally brilliant now had a smear of dark red, as if it was stained with blood. Some people knew that time was up. Big Kong, you have the fiery eyes and were born from the resonance of heaven and earth. It can be said that you have the mandate of heaven. This time, I want you to refine the strongest golden body in history. In the distance, Hao Yun spoke. His expression was indifferent, but his words were unquestionable. At the same time, he warned some people that Big Kong had a trace of his grandmaster's imprint on him. If anyone dared to secretly attack him, don't blame him for not warning them. The strongest golden body. Apart from my Hung clan, who dares claim to be #1 in the world? Hung Tuo spoke rather conceitedly. He had confidence. The stone Buddha was rather calm. He only put his palms together and chanted an ancient scripture because he didn't need to say much. Everyone in the world knew that the golden body of the Buddhist clan shocked the world. There were rumors of an unbreakable body in every generation. Everyone, stop fighting. There's always someone better out there. This has been the case in every generation. Someone tried to smooth things over. Is that so? I want to see who can transcend above. At this time, some people began to walk together in groups outside the waterfall. There were great benefits in seclusion with powerful and correct people in the sky-piercing waterfall. Of course, it was best if they were in the same realm. In this way, the runes that diffused when the other party comprehended the Tao could benefit those in the same realm around them. At this time, Ingzetian walked together with the core descendant of the Hung clan. They were at the same evolutionary level. The Rock Emperor and the young divine king of the Peacock clan glanced at each other and fought shoulder to shoulder. Although they were from different camps, it wasn't bad to form a temporary alliance. After all, it was said that the two clans were close relatives. There would be many benefits if they were to seclude together. For a moment, the young master of the Hung clan, Big Sky, the geniuses of the alien desolate race, the Rock Emperor, the young Golden Crow, and the White Tiger clan's beauty were surrounded by people and became the focus of attention. Chu Feng's place was too deserted. Apart from the donkey spirit, which was the Manchurian tiger, there was no one else. Some people revealed faint smiles. Although they didn't ridicule him, their expressions were self-evident. They were watching him make a fool of himself. Chu Feng's face was as tough as a mountain. He said, "Is there anyone coming over? I'll protect you all. I'll naturally cultivate the strongest body in history, and you can fight for the second strongest body by following me." In an instant, many people laughed. They didn't conceal their ridicule, and the corners of their eyes and brows were full of disdain. It'll only take one night to prove it. Don't regret it when the time comes. Chu Feng was indifferent. Then, he decisively shouted at the middle-aged woman who was selling the time furnace. "How about I sell you a spot? You can choose one person to follow me." "No." The middle-aged woman decisively refused. Everyone roared with laughter. "Then what are you waiting for? Send someone to protect me. Your organization promised," shouted Chu Feng. Everyone was speechless at first, but many people laughed out loud. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.